I said who?
What's going on? What's going
Who's still
on?
awake? I said who? Tell me who's still awake.
This time, we got on this live way later than
Oh, yeah.
usual. But we didn't set a time, so I didn't feel too stressed out about it.
I didn't feel too bad.
I didn't feel too bad. Thank you so much for coming here and watching the lives that we are doing. This will be the 5th one.
Mm-hmm.
We've done the first one, who is Jesus, and what was his purpose, and then where does the Bible come from, and then we did a video about sacrificial system, and then we did one about Paul.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're about to do a little summary. Nothing new for you tonight. There's always something new that pops up, but we just kind of want to clarify everything and maybe answer some questions. And,
Right. So if you do have questions, put them in the question box, and we are going to try to get to them. But yes, continue.
Yes.
Babe. Don't let me cut you.
Oh, yes. Oh, so if you haven't seen the videos that we've done so far, they are on this Instagram page if you scroll down, but also they're available on YouTube. If you go to my bio, it's Shabbat Studies, and you click on there and you'll get to a whole playlist so you can take a look. But they're long, so if you have patience and you have, if you're going on a long road trip or something, it's a pretty good. How far would you make the last video? How much? It's like 12 hours?
You can make it all the way across the state of Texas on that one.
Oh, yeah.
The last one was 9.5
Perfect.
hours by itself. So.
Especially now, if you're going, if you're celebrating, whatever you're celebrating around this time of year, it would be a good time to have a listen to these lives. Going deep.
Going deep.
So, yeah, it's some interesting things. Or some interesting comments that we've gotten. We've gotten some good comments and some it's all good. If you have a question, that's we like to get the questions, and then there are some that are really sweet and some that maybe aren't so sweet, and that's okay too, because this is some pretty. Okay, sit me down.
It look weird with you taller than me.
Oh, yeah, that is because
So-
he's 6'7" and I'm 5'3.5", so.
I was like, I feel like I'm sitting on my knee on the ground, and she's like pushed up, but it's all good.
Yeah, what was I saying?
We just had some feedback. It's all good.
Yeah.
It's all love, but
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna start my first point.
I just didn't remember what I was saying. That's why I was.
It's simply that we had some feedback. It's been honestly overwhelmingly great for the most part.
And we weren't sure what we were gonna, what kind of feedback we were gonna
We
get,
were kinda
because we
like-
know it's kind of, it's different, but maybe not so different if you look what other people.
It's different.
It is different.
Our beliefs are not mainstream, and so we definitely anticipated disagreement. What we were pleasantly surprised by, I feel, at least I was, is the relatively small amount of disagreements that we got and the overwhelming feedback of just how inspiring these conversations have been for people, how challenging they've been, how they've made people think and really connect dots on some things.
Yes.
How it's...
And before you continue, I just want to let you know we have a baby, so I can hear him right now. So you continue, and I'll be back.
Is he crying?
Yes.
Oh, that's part of why this whole day was all over the place, because we were like, oh, yeah, the baby. The baby's not been feeling that well. So he's never really had a sickness or a fever or anything like that before. So we're kind of like, why is he acting this way? He's not acting like his normal self. Anyway, it's been kind of like baby management day. But to be honest, our feedback has been by and large great, overall really positive, especially in the sense that just it's causing a lot of people to start to do their own research. And that's honestly the only thing that we really wanted. I do not ever tell anybody to just believe me or take my word for it. I don't often present tons of text and references while I'm initially talking, because the point is to really communicate a framework and then spark the idea for other Bereans or thorough thinkers to go do their own research. But we kind of like, I didn't know what to expect at first. And I was a bit just like, I don't know if I even want to look. And then as, you know, Jennifer, who's really the one getting all the notifications, she's like, no, Chris, is actually great feedback. People really have been digging it. And we've probably gotten, I don't know how many she would know the number, but I would say well over 30, 40, 50 separate people approach us over the last month or two and just be like, yo, this is really helping. Like, please keep this up. Like, this is making a lot of things click. So we're going to take some time tonight to honestly just not introduce anything new, but to unpack and really refine and like dust the wood shavings. You know, when you're building something new and you're sculpting something or you're sanding something, you gotta clear all the dust and get your broom out to see what it is you're kind of like presenting. That's what tonight's about. It's not going to be long, and I say that fingers crossed, like toes crossed, all the above. I'm not going to make it long because the point is to, if she's not going to come, I'm just going to go ahead and center myself for the cause. The point of tonight is really to just recap, honestly, just recap what we've talked about, condense it, and simply, Z, please be careful and don't kick that. Thank you. To just reiterate, you know, TLDR version, if you will, all the things that we have learned. So, Aileen, I saw your question. Now, I just saw it pop up. Can you put in, maybe you put it in the question box. Oh, it says question box and acting funky. I wonder how it is the people are making sense of Paul. They say he's difficult to understand and teach these amazing theories, the Olive Branch Fellowship. Okay, got it. That's a great question. I'm gonna see if I can screenshot it so that I can remember. I'm gonna Jen, it'll be in the comments, but I do see a question or 3 or 2 in this question box, so maybe it is acting right. You know, the Paul thing is such a prickly subject matter because you're kind of cutting at the Achilles heel and the root of the world's biggest religion when you come speaking against, or at least presenting the evidence that this key figure in the Christian Bible is not who people think he is. I hear this all the time, and you see it a lot with like Christian studies or Torah observant studies where Paul is difficult to understand by like 99% of the people who read him. And then there's this one tiny subset of people generally who are very knowledgeable about the Bible, and they always resort to the concept, oh, Paul, he's so clear. Paul, you just have to know how to read Paul. What Paul's really actually saying is, I find that statement quite ludicrous because Paul is the very reason that there are so many discrepancies in the Christian expression today. So I'm okay with people saying, hey, it's kind of like, I don't quite know what to make of him. I'm even okay with scholars and people who are very read on the subject, even if they disagree with my take on Paul, saying, you know, Paul can be a bit tough. You know, I do see how people can make that. But when you really scrutinize and get into the Greek, you read Paul in the Greek, then it's a lot clearer. Like, I'm okay with that. I might disagree with your conclusions, but at least you're being honest enough to recognize that what Peter said, apparently, is the same thing that we saying, that everybody who reads this dude is saying, is that he'll say 2 things. And that's what that's what we presented in our 9.5-hour talk last week, is simply how unfalsifiable this gentleman, and say gentleman very facetiously, is, because he simply says the one thing and he says the opposite of that thing. Not in every context, but in some of the key contexts, as it relates to Torah or the law, as it relates to eating meat sacrificed to idols, as it relates to, you know, how he feels about Peter and some of the rest of the disciples. So what I'm going to do is just do these quick bullet points about the recaps, and then I'm going to go into questions, because I will more thoroughly answer your question, Aileen. It is a good question, but I think that the question comes from the echo chamber. The answer to your question, rather, comes from the echo chamber of the fact that in any given fellowship or group, there's always people who fill in the blanks, right? So like a group of 100 people, 20 people have questions about something. Let's just say 50 people or 70 people, right? The remaining 30 filling in the blank makes the consensus such that it seems quite clear. Oh, well, yeah, we had that in a Bible study, but it was pretty clearly pointed out that X, Y, Z, where the whole practice of the hegemony of the group, of the consensus, is to maintain infallibility and the idea that because somebody at some point says that it all checks out and all has to make sense, therefore it does. Even when you're reading it and it doesn't all check out or all make sense. So I will readdress that question because I do think it's a good one. But hello, Emerald Lizard. Hello, Little House in the Ozarks. Hello, all of our friends. Sorry, again, like phone is, I got it, way over there. So I can see little things floating up on the screen, but it's a little hard to catch the details just with how the setup is. So without belaboring it anymore, I'm going to do a quick prayer and then we're going to do a quick recap. And tonight should be nice and short and sweet and hopefully pretty fun, hopefully we can bring some clarity to things that we weren't maybe as clear about up front. I do plan on addressing a handful of the comments that I got in disagreement on some of our premises or some of the things we presented. And, that'll pretty much be that. And then we'll kind of round it off with questions and then we'll close it up. And we won't make tonight too incredibly long. We got started a bit late, so it's just now 11. And it's the day before my dad's birthday. My dad's birthday is December 24th, and it's about 59 minutes to his birthday. So I'm gonna try to wrap this out within an hour. So, Father, thank you so much for another great Shabbat. Just the time that we have to relax and learn more about you and kind of enjoy family and just rest. We appreciate the truth that you've brought us through and toward, and we ask for your humility and your grace as we present what you've shared us. May our tone and may our demeanor come forth and be received in a palatable and non-offensible way, as it is not our intention to offend, but simply to present what you've shown us. Thank you so much for family and for everybody who's going through loneliness and questions in this season of life. We understand that it's not easy. And we understand that you are faithful despite the fact that things can be difficult in this life. So without any further ado, we say thank you again in Yeshua's name. Amen. Okay. So the first week, recapping. I stepped on something the other day and I cut my whole sock up. But the first week we spoke about who is Jesus and what is his purpose. And I'm actually glad we started off with that particular topic because I do believe it's the biggest catch-all, meaning it's the subject that everybody on earth knows about this dude. Everybody on earth know about Jesus H. Christ, right? So it did, I think, behoove us to start there. Looking back on it, I should have taken a lot of elements from our second chapter and presented them in the first because I have been speaking about what I've learned over the last 9 years, and I'm realizing it's not really hard for people to understand what you're saying, Chris. It's just hard for them to wrap their mind around the fact that they're all told the Bible is infallible. And what you're sitting here suggesting is challenging that notion. Now, I didn't even come out and I'm like, ha, your Bible's not perfect. That wasn't my point. That wasn't my MO. That was not my strategy, nor my intention. And I did say that basically in the second week. But in the first week, in the third week, and in the fourth week, that I didn't really mention that much at all. Problem is, the second you go challenging the sacrificial system's validity, the second you go challenging Paul's validity, the second you go challenging Jesus as commonly understood by the Christian, common denominator of being equivalent to God, people don't hear you anymore because, well, I can't say that. We've had nothing but feedback from people who do hear us. People tend to be fought with the cognitive dissonance that they either overcome or they don't. And that cognitive dissonance is what I've felt, usually stemming from the fact that, hold on, no. We're told this is an infallible book. What are you talking about? False apostle. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's not even that they can't wrap their mind around looking at something that Jesus says and looking at something that Paul says and seeing that there's a clear difference. Plenty of people do. They just find this internal cognitive dissonance because they're taught it's supposed to connect. It's supposed to. So maybe if you take this and you carry the two and you flip that and reverse it, then that's what he must have meant. Right? That happens internally most of us our entire lives. I'm meaning the external face value cognitive dissonance that's met when you really are challenging some of these mainstream things. And I'm going to continue to use what I call the modern day versions of parables or allegories to help present to you guys what it is that we are, the way we're seeing this whole bigger kind of narrative or the season of Jesus in his life and the management and the creation of the canon, the management of that canon as it has extended from, the fourth century when it was finally canonized all the way up until now. Some of the questions we got in our feedback, are like some from the disagreements make it at least pretty clear to me that the individual disagreeing does not quite, maybe hasn't settled really on how we've gotten the text and how the record between what we're told about how we've gotten the text and how it's actually gone is probably wider than the Grand Canyon. It's similar to the pharmaceutical industry of today, right? If we want to say I trust the science and you trust the people who say they trust the science versus actually looking at the scientific data yourself, the two paint a completely separate story, right? And state propaganda is built on having an official, rubber stamped, signed, sealed, and delivered way of explaining or doing things, and having dissenters and coup d'etats and all kinds of challenges come and challenge that. So we'll kind of not go too deep with it tonight, but tonight was really, I just felt like before we hit them with anything new, what I really want to do is bring it all in, take everything we've said and kind of settle it down so that if you were listening the last month and some change, you're kind of like, okay, I think I'm picking up what you're putting down. If you weren't listening for the last month and a half, tonight will be like the Cliff's Notes version. Some of what I say might seem like I'm jumping way past the goal line and that I'm just saying this stuff out of my butt, but we've probably spent, I think it's just been shy of 24 hours. I know we spent 14 hours collectively for the first 3 episodes. And then in the 4th episode was 9.5 hours by itself. So that's almost 24. I mean, that basically is 24 hours. So we've literally been running our mouth for a collective 24 hours about what we learned. And like we said, a lot of people have shown us, have given us great feedback, just that it's really inspired them to read and to start beginning their own research. And I said it a zillion times, don't trust us. I don't expect you to trust us. Well, I do expect you to trust us. I don't expect you to blindly trust us. Meaning I expect you to trust that we ain't stupid. But then I hope/encourage you to go and follow this stuff up, because I'm not here to tell you what to think or how to give you the complete conclusion on a thing. I'm here to share with you what it is that the Father has been educating myself and my wife on for the last almost decade. And beyond that, I don't know anything to anybody other than to say, I'll be happy to help you. You come at me with respect, I'll give you nothing but respect in return. We don't have to agree on everything, that's fine. But I can help point you to these directions because, that's more or less the best I could do. So the first week we spoke about who is Jesus and what is his purpose? And we disclosed our understanding in the corner that we've turned in recognizing that according to Jesus' own words, in his words, he is not God at all. In fact, the Son of Man, that's a title given to him 80-something times in the New Testament. A son of God is a handful of times, or less than 10. But Son of Man, honestly, is the title that is given to Yeshua, that he applies to himself, that the gospel writers apply to him more than anything. The Bane of Adam. And in this regard, I really do think he was like a second Adam, like a Adam. I can't say reincarnated because that's not what I mean, but just kind of like an Adam that came back in a pure sense to be a guide for mankind. And that guide and that guideline, if followed, will set you on the path that is life and will end you up in everlasting life, eternal life. And Yeshua's words make that quite clear. And I think most people on paper would agree with that. I just don't think that most Christians, at least, or people who claim to believe in or follow Jesus, have ever really stopped to audit the discrepancy between what Jesus said about himself and what the state and the rest of the conversation that goes on around him has had to say about him. Come on. Come on back on. I thought you was going to be down for the count, so I done scooched my chair on over. I did a scooch.
You did a scooch?
I did a scooch.
Oh, here, I got the monitor.
Oh,
just
baby,
in case.
technology.
I figured out how to have him, his sleep patterns and stuff. It's getting better.
It's getting better.
For me. I mean,
good.
he knows when he's sleeping. I'm just figuring out when he's sleeping. So, but I'm sure everything is going well. What did I miss? I mean, I'm sure you're in the middle of a sentence and I'm...
That was the case.
Okay.
It's okay.
So
I was just basically recapping who Jesus was and what was his purpose, how we have come to learn that he is... I mean, I can give you 50 titles, right, for Jesus. And all of them, I believe that he is Messiah.
Yes.
Navi Emet, Son of God, the Standing One, the Prophet of Truth, the Alpha and Omega. Like we can keep going. Mm-hmm. You just don't hear me say God,
the King,
the three, one in the Trinity. That what the first week was about saying, hey, you guys. Everybody claims to think they know something about Jesus, but very few people actually could tell you the tribe he was from. They can tell you so little about the Jewishness, if you will, of Jesus, but yet they have so much to say. And our research started with, okay, who is this Jesus? We learned everything about all these other industries. It is not what we were told. So we can't imagine that the religious industry is just like,
right. And, I mean,
nothing's going on here. That's us. Like, no.
Right. Yeah, just knowing, looking into the different translations. Seeing that there are different translations, just that alone, in English, different English translations. And I think one thing that really kind of really pulled the string out of the shirt, if that's a saying, is when Paul was kind of jerked.
Maybe, but baby, you hopping, like I'm over here. We gonna get there. I mean, that's true, but in terms of Jesus being not God. That Paul...
Well, yeah, that too. Yeah.
In terms of Jesus being not God, how did Paul factor into that for you?
Well, it was just that there was so many things to think about. Who is this person, and is he not supposed to be there? And it's just all these things that we started to really dig into, and not that we wanted anything to be untrue, or that we're trying to be going against the grain on purpose, It's that we were just seeing all these things that were said on the mainstream platform that was not going along with what's you can see in the actual book. So...
Ain't that the truth? So
it's about everything in this world.
To continuing, Yeshua has an incredibly profound and important purpose. So if you were to hear what we said in the first episode, Jesus is not God. However, Jesus is the person who I believe we should be modeling our lives after, following in a literal sense. And the reason is because Jesus fulfilled, walked out, gave us an example, set the primary example for how to conduct oneself according to the law. Now, there's a lot of nuance about how he considered the veracity and authenticity of the Torah at his time. And, the case could be made that some of his actions and some of his deeds were absolutely, I won't say in violation, but would have been considered in violation of the Torah that had become established during his day, which, again, we believe has had a lot of, leaven involved in its preparatory, yeast-like handling. But
he's coming to resurrect that truth.
Correct, which I think had by and large been lost. So, well, I can't say by and large been lost. It had just been overshadowed with traditions of men. Put it like that's a nice way to put it, because that's basically what's going on today. How about that? So we understand that the average Christian finds that a difficult concept, that Jesus, that according to these people on your screen right now, Jesus is important and he's the Son of God and he's Messiah, all these things, but he's not equal to God. Because from most people's interpretation of John 1:1 or of, is it 1 John 5? No. That's the other one by this. No. That's the 1 John 5 is the these three bear witness and one. So whether you're talking textual interpolations like 1 John 5, and maybe my reference is wrong. I didn't actually map this episode out. Today was not about like introducing or outlining anything. I said, let me just talk. Let's not make this too long, and let's recap. So whether we're talking, for there are three that bear witness in heaven, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and these three are one. Just these textual insertions that don't exist in the original biblical Greek text. Or we're talking people's application of John 1:1, being that in the beginning the Word was with God and the Word was God.
Oh, and yeah.
Or in the beginning was the Word and the Word was with God. But we talked about that a little bit in that first episode, just about how logos is a thing. And that's why I think that the languages were really helpful, going back into the Greek and be like, okay, got it. So logos is the word that they're using, and someone's logo, it's kind of like that, right? If I have a logo on my chest and it's representing who I am not equivalent to that logo, but it is like the logo kind of, I can't say it's equivalent to me.
You're a representative of it.
You're sure, for sure. I'm a representative of the logo, and the logo is a representative of me. It's just that I'm not equal to the logo. See what I'm saying? That's where it gets lost in the sauce with English, because the second you take the word logos out of the conversation, John chapter 1, verse 1, people don't know how to make of what the word means. So they get the merging and splurging and splicing, and before you know it, Jesus equal God, apparently, because John 1:1. So,
but also there's, things like if it's supposed to say it and you put he there, then it has another meaning also in the whole context of the verse.
We learned about all the different pronouns, how funky a pronoun could be. But without going into John 1:1, because we don't really need to read it, it was simply just to bring up, we don't believe that he's equal to God. So this is why if we found it challenging when most songs, most worship is oriented and directly to Jesus, bypassing the Father, the Most High. Mm-hmm. There ain't nobody talking to the Most High at all. Just ignoring him, because we're singing to Jesus, who we're told is equal to God. And even if we want to believe that, it's like if I'm equal, if we equally yoked, right? We marry, and everybody wants to sing songs to her, right? And just ignore, like, completely leave my name out of the conversation. Mm-hmm. I might feel like, oh, come on, like, and I'm here too, like, hello, like, hey, what's up? I don't want to be the Beyonce or nothing, but like, hey.
I just want to say, in the parables, you can tell that where his position is. I mean, if you even look at the he's supposed to be the vine. He's not the,
The root, the stem, the whole tree.
Yeah, he's not the owner of the land. If you look at the wicked, the parable of the wicked vine dressers, and or God is the landowner, and then the servants are sent out, and then they're killed, and all kinds of bad things happen to them. And then he says, well, surely they will listen to my son. And the vine dressers knew who he was, that he was the son or the heir, and they didn't want him to come in to mess up what they had, so they killed him. And it's right there in the parable who he is, and it's not just one parable; it's several parables. And
right. So that meaning there's several different textual examples of him being the Son of God, being a separate thing, right? From that example to, Father, if there's any way this cup could pass from me, please, but nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. All these are different verses that when you just break down the language and linguistics, there's just no way that he could be talking about himself, right? So we spent a lot of the first week really just, I don't want to say demoting Jesus, because I don't believe that that's what we're doing. I really think we're just trying to clarify what he claimed he was, and spray and kind of like pressure wash all of the lies and the glue and the sticky silly putty that's been added over the years about this guy. Not because Chris and Jen have a bone to pick against Jesus at all. That's not the case. Yeah. Our whole research was catapulted by our desire to find out who Jesus was. And when we did, we were like, oh, okay, wow, it's not what I was taught growing up. Okay, this is different. So we're gonna have to like regroup on how to like approach our life around this. This was 8 and some change years ago for us, but a lot.
But also, it's like finding all of this out. People are afraid to go deeper and dig, because they think that, well, a lot of people are led astray, and then they just throw the whole thing out, the baby with the bathwater, and
it's fear. It's like people are afraid.
What's gonna happen with us?
It's a strange. I do understand it, because I understand how religious mind control and just mind control in general work, and how fear is pretty much. If it ain't the most, it might be the second most effective emotion. Love and fear, basically.
Question nothing.
Question nothing.
It's what fear of questioning things.
Right, or fear of just the consequences that come if you question it and you don't like the answer and all the, it's just a lot. It's fear-based. And that was very much the very first question you asked in the first episode is, do you think that the church or the Christian culture is really who's responsible for a lot of the fear in people's mind? And the answer is 100% yes, we do. We think that has a lot more to do with religious propaganda than the truth, right? If I'm true and my daughter is my daughter, she can investigate anything on earth about me, and I'm not going to be mad at her for doing that. You see what I'm saying? Like anything on earth. I ain't going to be mad at her. In fact, I'm going to encourage her to do that. And if she finds something that's written about her own father that's different from what she knows about her own father or the character about her own father, she might just want to point that out. And that might just be something that me as her father would encourage and smile upon her for doing. See what I mean?
Yeah, when there's lies have been told about your father, and this doesn't sit right. I know there's a father, and I know all these things, but this nugget right here doesn't seem like it fits, you know.
So the first week was all about really getting to the bottom of who Jesus is. So when people hear our take, I really want people to really understand. Now, I'm not telling you what to think. I just want to be clear about how we think about Jesus. We don't hate Jesus at all. We don't ignore him. We don't abrogate him. We don't belittle him, besmirch him. I don't stub my toe and call his name. Nothing like that. We simply understand that, like, okay, got it. There is this false light movement. And the false light movement is actually all up and in Main Street right now. It's everywhere. I see it literally everywhere. Like everywhere. It's literally everywhere. And this false light movement has this veneer of righteousness, this veneer of holiness, this Christ consciousness, this Christ-related terminology, but it's very little Jewish to do with it, Hebrew. It's very little Torah to do with it. It's more Kabbalah than anything. And it has a lot of
And you need to explain what that is.
blurriness. I will, but there's a lot of blurriness between Jesus and Jesus who he ultimately said he was, and Jesus who we ultimately want to make him in. And that's why I say there's a lot of blurriness, because the average consensus is that he's equal to God, right? Within this New Age false kind of faux Jesus motif, it's like not only is he God, but you God too, because we are Jesus, and as long as we have this consciousness of Christ within us, then we are godlike.
Right.
And the focus is really on Jesus equaling God and you basically equaling God too.
That, and also to say that I can't do that. He is God, you know. If he does it, I just have to give up because he will do it all for me, and I'm just gonna do whatever because he forgives me anyway. And it's really about you doing the walk
and getting
and
your
talking
act
the talk. And I think that's the ultimate thing. I think it's like steering you in a direction of doest thy wilt, which is like a motif or a, you know, really a satanic motto, really. So
really, that part. So
yeah, and that's not what the Father wants. He wants us to do the right thing, and there is a line to follow.
Oh yeah.
If you love is not going along with everything. If you go along with everything, you might get hurt and die. I don't know. I mean, it's like you have to have guidelines for your children, and so the Father is showing us how to model our lives in the best way. And so, you know, Yeshua being the Son of God or Son of Yah is just he being the very definition of what a son is supposed to be. Someone that is exactly like his father now. And then that can go to the next generation and the next generation. And the mother too. The mother, you know, is also supposed to be a good example. It's not just the son and the father. It's the mother, and they're all together, and they all, you know, evenly yoked and walk together in the right direction.
Correct. Yeah. So week 1, right? And again, if you hadn't seen it, I would definitely encourage you to go back and give it some time, be patient with us, but we present a strong case for why Jesus is exactly who Jesus claimed to be. And there were others that put words and themes and concepts in the mouth and in the life space of Jesus that leave the reader coming to somewhat different conclusions about Jesus than his own words would leave you to conclude about himself. And we just left it at that week number 1 because it was already challenging enough.
His words.
Correct. So that week went great. And after we released that video, and I remember watching it back and going, this is good. I think people are really liking this. I think people are really vibing if they're sticking with us. So the first week we spent establishing Jesus, who he is, who he isn't. And again, the reason I'm coming today to even reiterate that is to say that the reason why we did that, and now I'm reminded of exactly why I was really like, I think we need to go and explain why we've talked about this, is because we're entering what everybody I'm sure can identify as a pretty weird time on this earth.
Yeah.
The end times, maybe, right? Who knows? But that's what everybody's under the assumption of, because it ain't the beginning times, I can tell you that. Woo! And I think that the Father gave us a pretty clear heads up on a particular deception that's happening on the world stage. And it's not exclusively tied into religion. Now, religion is kind of its main exploitable channel, if you will, but it spans multiple categories. So when we first became aware of this years ago, I was struck like, yo, hold on, like, so I never really, like, every Christian knows that before Christ comes, I don't want to use air quotes, but, you know, as we've been told, so the story goes. That's what the air quotes mean. Before Jesus' return, the Antichrist shows up. But if any Antichrist is going to be good enough and worth their salt and able to deceive even the elect, they're going to need to create a red herring antichrist, a scapegoat antichrist, something that everybody thinks is the antichrist at first, and then the real antichrist comes and says, no, that was antichrist, but I'm Christ. And as by claiming that he's Christ, or Christ reincarnate, or Christ reimagined, or whatever, that will allow this antichrist to actually exist as the biblical antichrist, so that when the real Christ comes, there's actually like there's a imposter to be ousted. You see what I'm saying? Not where the whole world totally sees the antichrist coming from a mile away, and then Christ comes.
Yeah.
So,
look, he has red horns.
Right, there he is, right there, red horns. That's the antichrist.
He's so
Don't follow
mean.
him. Oh God. No. Okay, I'm waiting on Jesus. You see what I'm saying? So you're gonna have red herring antichrist, real antichrist, Christ. Now, I'm not here today to talk about eschatology or the antichrist, but I'm explaining to you this because this was my thinking and my heart and our thinking when we first started. He said, hold on now. It has to go like that. Before the real Christ returns, a red herring, the Antichrist reigns.
Before we continue.
I got some lamp on my beard. Before the Antichrist has its heyday, a red herring or some sort of like, ha, see people, you almost trusted this fool, but they are the Antichrist. Follow me, I'm Christ. Has to happen so that even the elect that could possibly be deceived be like, oh, I guess that is the real Christ. And then the real Christ comes and says, blows the whistle and says, he's an imposter. Here I am. Hidden cameras, come on out type thing. So I brought that story up to say, I don't think people have, I'm not going to tell you what you are or aren't. I don't think I was aware that a false light movement was so necessary and so in the works already when I first went into this. I would have thought we're dealing with battle of good and evil. This world is really a battle of good and evil, light versus darkness. It took me being a whole 30-something and some change-year-old to be like, actually, I'm pretty sure it's not good and evil, light and darkness. I'm pretty sure it's light versus false light versus darkness. True light versus false light versus true darkness. And the true light and the true darkness rather and the false light are working in the checkerboard-like dance where you do this and I do that. You do this.
The good cop and bad cop.
Good cop and bad cop, right? And so it's obvious, and I'll use just a basic political whatever just to make the point clear. It's obvious that your Justin Trudeau's and your Joe Biden's and your Barack Obama's and your Hillary Clinton's play this kind of liberal-ish, kind of left of center, not entirely God-fearing lane. That's like, they Catholic, right? Oh yeah, Catholic, but you don't never see them in church or mass or nothing like that.
Oh no,
your conservatives, your George Bushes, your Mitt Romneys, your John McCain's, your Donald Trump's, like they will play the Christian card, right? So that's a simplified example of the darkness and the false light, where Christians will look and go, well, I'm not voting for no Joe Biden. He believes in abortion. I'm voting for Donald Trump. He's a man that stands on character and principle. This is an obvious dark, a character that's wearing black with a hoodie on, right? Playing the role that's meant to appeal to the people who like that, right? Goth kids and all the atheists of the world. Then there's the rest of the half of the Christian nation that is Americans on the right side, and they need this light, something light to actually vote for. So they're given that. They fill that role just fine. But
given a really small box to work inside of.
Right. Donald Trump come with 2 Corinthians. All y'all know is he said 2 Corinthians, and that's it. That's all y'all need to know.
What's your favorite?
The Bible and the Art of the Deal. That's the 2 best books ever. I always say it's the second best book after the Art of the Deal. That's all you need to know. Right? But that's what they do. That's this false light. So when I learned that, oh wow, spiritually speaking, the new age is an entire movement built on presenting the false light as the solution to an obvious darkness that they themselves expose. They call it the season of disclosure.
Yeah. And it's not only that, it's also to with this principle, or how they set up the Christianity, that everyone that confesses with their mouth that, that Jesus is Lord and he rose on the third day and all these things, and now you're considered a Christian. There's no like character
Change.
check or anything like that. So if a person says they're Christian, then that's cool,
And they're Christian.
And that's the problem. Like, you got to look at the fruits.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Do they have the fruits of it?
Not
That's how you will know. And I think that's why they water it down. Like, no. Yeah. He said he believes in Jesus.
Yeah, Kanye West is a great example. Kanye done said all of the above. Y'all went off hating him, loving him, hating him. Jesus is king, and now he back doing Balenciaga. It's like, see what I'm saying? See how fruits actually got to matter? So
you got to see a whole change, and then walking the other way, away from all this nonsense.
Absolutely.
That
So
you were doing.
This is why I don't know.
I'm just having these here. I feel comfort. No, I'm just kidding.
In the words of John.
I'm ready just in case to flip to a page.
I know she's got her Bible warrior, Bible sword, her sword of the spear right here. It's gonna turn into a whole dog and a double-edged sword. And slink. Anyway, so the first week was about establishing what we see as a impending problem, and that is how people couch Jesus as God, because worshiping Jesus as God is the perfect grease to grease the ... of whatever might come when Jesus as a figment or some sort of like manifestation shows up.
And also
Alien Jesus, gay Jesus, whatever they decide to do.
He has the authority to do anything. He can change anything. He can change.
Man
That's
into
the
woman.
problem. Like, even with churches and stuff, that they can take on this authority, and now they can do whatever they want with that authority. And that's the tricky thing, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
Having that title and then
having what
change.
title?
Like, if I'm God, I can change things, right?
Oh, God, sure, yeah, exactly. So Jesus just this
he comes
week
in and
he
it's like,
says
we're not going to
this.
do this anymore.
That week Jesus made for all foods clean. Exactly. So the reason we're putting this out is because we're realizing, holy smokes, there's a big deception coming where the world accepts this religious thing. Maybe it'll be Jesus, I don't know, but like this religious figure that people equate to either being God or a vicar or representative of God, because they haven't been they haven't been told up to this point how their present system is already being gamed. So we're already off to the next trick. The present trick, the trick that's been going since all of us have been born, that's just now getting exposed. Just now. I've been seeing videos of P. Diddy everywhere. Everybody talking about P. Diddy now. Right now. Diddy been diddling for 30, 40 years. But now they want to talk about him. So TD Jakes, everybody crumble. Everybody's empire is about to crumble along with a lot of this pop culture empire. But obviously that's built on exposing the disclosing the secrets strategically. And the strategic disclosure, that was everything about these sealed indictments and mass arrests, all this. Strategic disclosure is to say, hey, look, you guys, look at that. That's bad. Look how evil and icky it all is. Ew, it's so icky. You don't want that. You want righteousness and Christ consciousness, don't you?
And that there's no definition of what love is. That's
Baby,
the problem.
that's hold on, love. I mean, yeah, but yes. So there is no common definition of it.
I'm just saying, like, if you don't know, if you can't define what love is, and everything goes.
Yeah, I mean,
You know what I mean?
exactly. So this Christ consciousness is that's the lingo of this new trick that, if you ask me, is not really new, because I believe that the truth of Yeshua in the first century Nazarene church and that whole movement was so infamous that it upset the status quo, and that status quo sought to glue and shellac a Roman approved model that they use for a time until they're incubating this celestial model that almost supersedes the Roman model. And the celestial model, this Christ consciousness false light thing, they ride in on a campaign of exposing the Roman Catholic Church for the lies and the pedophilia and everything that they've been involved in, allegedly, right? And I mean, talk about wink. Is there something in my eye or am I winking when I say allegedly? But the false light, this new incoming false light kind of system season that we're moving into now, away from the incumbent tricks, is all about exposing the trick. And so for us, I just remember thinking, I feel like people are not going to have a fighting chance unless they are told the whole story. They don't have to believe me. They just need to be introduced. We need to plant enough seeds to get people to look for their own enough to learn how the world works and the story works and the record keeping works. Because when you get enough street smarts to develop, okay, got it. So that's what y'all do. Y'all be saying this and then doing that. Okay, got it. Then you don't need to ask me or Jen, well, what do you think about A, B, or C? You can kind of have some of those sensibilities yourself. And when we saw this trick coming, it was like, okay, number one, we need to get ourselves out of the trick's way. But number two, we need to make sure to try to encourage and educate and help present to others as nicely as possible so that they'll actually do something about it. Yo, like, y'all, and by y'all, I mean me too for most of my entire life. Not you because you didn't grow up Christian, but I believed a theosophist-based New Age extrapolation of Jesus's reality. My whole upbringing. It was never presented to me like that, but now I can look back and say, Blavatsky and the whole theosophy thing certainly influenced a lot of the themes and thoughts that I was taught growing up in my Christian upbringing. So she's the one that's saying we're going to be using the Christian church and the Masonic fraternity to bring about the true doctrine of Lucifer. And I spoke about this in the last episode, but I just remember at the time being like, really? I don't think that's possible. That's not possible. Y'all witches think y'all know. And then I later learned, oh, got it. Like they kind of did all the groundwork already. And I'm just now born 30-something years ago and figuring this out. It's been a couple thousand years in the making.
Yeah, it's like slowly but surely. It's like...
Exactly. So the reason why we started out saying, okay, y'all need to understand Jesus is because Jesus being equal to God is the primary tool that is being sharpened to get people to worship this false whatever as God, right? If Christians are groomed to go to church every Sunday and to sing songs about facts about Jesus that he knows about himself, like you are so good, you are so good to me, like oh I am good, I'm good to you. Well, why you ain't good to me, huh? Why you ain't do what I asked you to do?
I'll be back.
Singing songs, right? They're groomed to sing these songs and they equate the subject of their adoration to being God, right? And they do so earnestly, right? I'm not here mocking Christians at all. I think Christians can be very lovely, nice people. So can atheists, right? But the point is, it's not about mocking or singling out any one person. It's about saying, listen, we just weren't educated all right. They didn't tell us everything right. And they have a lot of us trained to equate Jesus to God, which is the first trick, if you ask me, in getting someone to worship a false something as God, is to already start by moving the worship of God out of its proper context to begin with, which is what my generation and the decades before me has been about doing. I think that there are individual songwriters and worshipers who definitely really reorient that right back to Yahweh, like right back to the Most High. But as a corporate collective group, we have Hillsong, we have Jesus culture, we have, Bethel, we have these kind of big churches, Elevation, that create most of the music or the music labels that they're on that create almost all of the music that Christians hear. And the themes are so condensed, and what's approved and allowed through those labels is so condensed, but the themes that the writers write about so condensed to where it's basically just it's just a hyper focus on Jesus as God. And I remember being like, they're setting everybody up. Most people wouldn't even, like, if a Jesus-like figure showed up somewhere in Israel with all the blessings of all the rabbis and all the Netanyahus of the world and the Donald Trumps and the Paula Whites and the Kenneth Copelands and, the Rick Warrens or whoever, most Christians would probably be like, all right, here we are. This is what we've all been waiting for, right? And the second you find some corporate worship ceremony where even if it was just singing to that person as an honorary vicar of God, you would see institutional large assemblies begin reorienting their focus toward this Jesus character. And I already can see it from a mile away, like, yo, they setting everybody up to worship the Antichrist as God by getting us to focus away from God to begin with, right? So that's why we started out addressing it like this. It wasn't just to say, oh, we're bored, we want to pick on Jesus. It was to say, we're all talking about the tricks in this season that we're in. And the tricks are not limited to pharmaceutical tricks. They're not limited to political tricks. They're not limited to financial usury and things like that. And they're certainly not limited to like food and agriculture or electronic warfare. Religion is the one that affects almost everybody on earth. Everybody believes something, right? So the tricks didn't start with any of these newer industries, and they certainly are not, it's certainly thorough in the religious sector, we'll say. So that is the why we came out. That's the why behind why we came out. Like, yo, I think people really need to know there's a trick coming. And I'm not trying to be, like, I know it's going to get confusing because they said that the whole point is to destroy Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and atheism. Have Christianity and atheism mutually destroy one another. Have Islam and Judaism mutually destroy one another. And all of the parishioners, all the people who without a compass, without knowing where to render their adoration, are left ready to receive the pure doctrine of the true light of Lucifer. That's what they say. Now, I'm trying to combat that by saying, listen, y'all, like, don't hate on your Muslim friends. Don't hate on your Jewish friends. Let's not even hate on the atheist friends or the Christian. Like, let's not hate on anybody. We know that's what they want us to do is fight. Let's do the opposite of that, okay? If we can, if there is to be a stopping this. But more importantly, it's to know, like, okay, what is true about what I believe, so that moving forward, I'm not like ready for the yoink carpet to be ripped out because the construction of my religion fell prey, or gave away, I should say, to the demolition of my religion, and I never bothered auditing it or questioning it in this whole 39 years I've been on this earth. So that's kind of the backstory about why. And week one was really all about Jesus. I realized after having watched week one that I should have actually spent a little bit more time educating people on what we've learned about how the Bible itself was formed. And so we spent several hours on chapter 2, the second week, saying, all right, you guys, let's back up a bit. This is how we even got this Bible that we have today. Now, a lot of y'all have been told that this book is infallible. And a lot of y'all have been told that this book is the inspired word of God, the inerrant word of God, and the infallible word of God. And I would agree that it is the inspired word of God. I just don't know if inerrant or infallible are words that we can apply to a book that has 13 official variations of its authenticity. You see what I'm saying? It's like, and the variations are variants because they like have whole books that are either included or not included in some of these canons. So there's that, right? There's the mechanics, we'll say, of how we even got this book. And the reason we spent time doing that is because I think it's okay if the average person, like the average scholar, comes to the full okayness, the understanding that, okay, we're not dealing with infallibly God, Jesus, force-filled, protected. This is, untouched by anything negative at all times. We're not dealing with that, but that's okay, right? Because we can learn, we can solve the riddle. It's kind of like a code book, like a clue book that has the guide to life in it. Now, we talked last week about how I believe it also has a massive test included. The test to see, are you paying attention to Moses? Are you paying attention to God? Are you paying attention to Jesus? Or are you just paying attention to that pastor over there that's only telling you themes and ideas that could be supported in the work of this one other guy in the Bible that ain't Jesus. Okay. So that, I'm kind of jumping, but the second chapter was all about how can we really make sense of what this book that we have in front of us, and whether or not we're dealing with something infallible. And our conclusion, and you can go back and hear the details on how we arrived at this conclusion, was that yes, God inspired the men who wrote what they wrote to write what they write. But some of these men were thousands of years removed from other writers. There was no The Bible audition where you just submitted your book and some righteous literary agent decided to decide, who had the best grasp on God and who didn't. This was a book that had multiple variations still to this day, but wasn't even officially canonized in what's considered an official sense, the Bible, right? The whole Bible, until the late 300s, almost 400 years after the first century, or at least about 350 or so years after Jesus' time. So because we are dealing with a book that was not met with, okay, this is the official record, until 350 years later, in a season where the very people group that Jesus was a part of were being captured, right? People have to understand that, some of the negative feedback we got was, well, the text is here, the scribes and the Jewish system has managed this so infallibly. And I'm going, you say that because they tell you to say that, not because logic actually makes sense, right? I used the example talking to my wife earlier about the Native Americans. I love Native Americans. In fact, I'm pretty sure we got Native American heritage in our family. So this is no shade on the Native Americans, but everybody knows that the Native Americans are a subjugated, captured, oppressed people group at the hands of the American government. Why should we think that the American government will handle the textual record of the Native American tribes and all the nuances that go along with that favorably? Why would we think that 1,200 years or so, 1,300 years before printing press, that anyone's captors will manage their captives' texts with integrity and honesty? I'm saying, you see what I'm saying? This is why we're presenting it this way, because I can't prove to people everything. I can prove to you a lot of what I say. I just can't prove everything of what I say. And it requires that you understand how the world works, right? If Anthony Fauci wants to tell me something is safe and effective, I might just disagree. You see what I'm saying? It's not ridiculous of me to disagree, especially when this gentleman has been in a position where he's lied before, where the apparatus that he's a part of is replete with control and subversion and deception all the way up and down its entire system, the American government. See what I'm saying? I might just not actually believe him that it's safe and effective. So if he says, no, we tested everything about this whole formula is sound and good to go, that doesn't mean that it is. You see what I'm saying? Just because Jewish rabbis of today who are favored inside the rabbinical Jewish system say, oh, no, there's no way. We manage it perfectly. During the thousands of years you didn't have a country or a leadership structure, you managed it perfectly. Got it. You see what I'm saying? It's like, I just don't agree. Like, I don't dislike you. I just don't actually think that you're thinking these things through. Not you, hypothetical you. I'm just saying, I don't think a lot of people are thinking through how captured a captured state really is and what the logistics look like of their culture and their record being perfectly maintained through all these seasons of captivity. This is why I believe that Jesus says, I'm leaving with you the Holy Spirit, the Comforter. I believe that God's Ruach is really what teaches people. That's really what helps the record stay true over the ages, because the textual record, I mean, you could just have a otherwise righteous person be drinking some grape juice one day, but just spill some grape juice on the one copy I had, and that's ruined. See what I'm saying? There's so many accidental ways that text could get ruined, not simply just like under captivity, that it just is a bit basic, I guess, if you ask me, that like this Jesus force field and this God force field has existed around the book that we're told in many cases inside the own book had been corrupted. Okay. So we spent a little bit of time talking about Jeremiah chapter 8, verses 8. And, I'm not going to pull the whole Jeremiah. I'm not going to read the whole chapter or anything. But the thing that I think people don't quite, well, let me put it like this. I never knew this until really looking back on here. 2A. Okay. Is it 2:8 or 2:9? Then I brought you into a garden land to eat its fruit and its goodness, but when you entered it, you defiled my land and made my inheritance an abomination. The priests did not say, where is Yahweh? And those who handled the Torah did not know me. Y'all hear what I just said? This is not even Jeremiah chapter 8. This is Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 8. The priests did not say, where is Yah? They did not look for Yah. They didn't care about Yah. The priests at the time. And those who handled the Torah did not know me. And the shepherds transgressed against me. And the prophets prophesied by Baal and walked after no value. Right? Okay, so the priests that handled the Torah did not know me. That's God literally saying that to Jeremiah. But then other people want to sit here and go, no. The Torah was managed perfectly the whole time. But then what's the leaven of the Pharisees? How can Jeremiah in chapter 8 say, for the lying pen of the scribes has worked falsehood and has made the Torah into a lie. The same scribes that they said did not seek Yah's face or did not actually consult him or did not know him. Those who handled the Torah did not know me. Did it say they knew me, but occasionally every Tuesday and Thursday they just wouldn't show up to my prayer meetings? Or did it literally say they did not know me? Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 8. Just look that up in case I'm just making it up. You see what I mean? So I'm pulling out verses like that to say, if Jeremiah is explaining that those who handled the record, the Bible at the time, did not know or consult with the Most High, then who are we to say otherwise? Why didn't that just happen? And that righteously God has restored and rebuilt? I mean, that conversation is fine to have too. People just seem to take the basic route with this. So we spent a lot of time the second week just getting to the bottom of the fact that, yes, we're not dealing with something that's infallible, but that's okay. Please don't throw this baby out with this bathwater. I hear so then you don't think that so-and-so, then why should we just throw so-and-so? I have never suggested to throw anybody out. Even Paul. I literally said I have more words of his that I agree with. There are themes about spiritual warfare in Paul's writings that don't exist in the writings of anybody else in the whole book, and which in that regard are helpful. I say you just got to be careful, like 2 Peter 2, 3, 15 to 16, it says, those who don't know the history of Torah, don't know the backstory, the foundation of the faith of Jesus, will read Paul's words that are nonsense and twist them to their own destruction. Now, we can be nice and say difficult to understand instead of saying dysnoetos, which technically does mean something a lot stronger than what difficult to understand would imply it means. But we're not here to throw shade. I'm not trying to ruffle no feathers. I'm just trying to say people end up twisting Paul's words to their own destruction when they don't understand. Oh, wait, no. The Torah is not like a trainer until Messiah comes. The Torah is eternal. It's not a trainer even now. It's maybe you could say it's I'm trained by it, but my Heavenly Father's instructions are not a tutor or a schoolmaster or a trainer. They're my guide to life. That's what I call him. Paul can call him whatever he wants to. So we spent some time speaking the second week about not only about the canon, but also about things like 2 Timothy, right? All scripture is inspired by God and is profitable for correction, for teaching, and for instruction and reproof in righteousness. That first is italicized. And any word that's italicized means it's not actually there in the original text. So when you say all scripture is inspired, that is simply isn't there. All scripture inspired of God is profitable. But scriptura is the word here in question. All scriptura. That's just the Latin way to say all of the ketuvim, all of the graphe, all the writings, the physical writings. Your CVS receipt, that's scriptura. Your dinner napkin with your ideas and your notes, passing it around tape, that's scriptura. Anything that's a physical writing is scriptura. Not all writings are holy, right? All this verse is really saying is that anything in this section that's not the Torah and not the prophets that happens to be inspired by God is profitable for correction, for teaching, and for instruction. Now, again, I get that that's a Paul verse, but that's not my point. Because that maybe is my new point. It's a great example of how Paul has written, this is a great example of the problem that we're dealing with. And I'll explain what I mean by that. 2 Timothy, nobody actually thinks Paul wrote that. That's well within the category that scholars consider the books that Paul maybe didn't write, right? We know he wrote these books over here, but we don't think he necessarily wrote those. Pseudepigraphal. Number one. Number two, it's showing you how they just stick words into the Bible and how that changes entire doctrines. Chris, no. All scripture is inspired. It says it right there. See what I'm saying? They just stuck that is in there, and now you're over here yelling, spitting at me. And I'm the one who's went back and looked at what the italic words means and at the Greek, and you haven't done either, but you want to talk about what you know. So that's the second thing that it exposes. What it also exposes is how, or I shouldn't say exposes, what it also brings to light is how somebody who we firmly believe is a false prophet can make a true statement if he actually did make that statement. I do believe that any writing that God inspired is profitable for correction, for teaching, and for instruction in righteousness. Of course. I would probably be a little sus to believe whether Galatians applies to that injunction, but as far as the statement on paper, sure, of course I believe that. Anything that God actually inspires clearly is profitable for your health and for your life and for teaching. I just don't think he inspired every word. In the Roman decision process of what was in and what was out. When Paul is over there, essentially saying the Torah is like a curse, like it made sin manifest in me. Curse is anyone that hangs on a tree, right? He's essentially low-key mocking Yeshua. I don't think God inspired that. I think God allowed him to say what he was going to say so he could be a test that could be included later. But, you see what I'm saying? It's this is why I think just reading what's in front of us and soaking up the clarity around what is there versus reading what we want to read into the text is very important, because I think a lot of people end up just reading stuff in, the fact that the italicized word wasn't there. And so now it don't matter because the new Bibles don't even italicize. They just introduced a word that changed a whole course of a meaning of a book that Paul most likely didn't even write, right? The writings of what may or may not be a false prophet that he may or may not have even written. So it's a lot of layers going on, but that 2 Timothy verse we did highlight in that second chapter. We also talked about just kind of the different codices, the different variations, right? You have your Septuagint, which is your Greek Old Testament. But when you look into who commissioned the Septuagint, it was Ptolemy. Okay, Ptolemy, I think the second. Go to Google, Ptolemy the second. Sibling lover. Ptolemy the second, known as sibling lover, commissioned the LXX, of the Septuagint translation of the Hebrew scriptures. It's okay, got it. A guy so famous for being incestuous and sleeping with his own siblings that, 2,300 years later, we're still finding that detail about him. And that's listed before the fact that he even commissioned the translation of the Septuagint, that he's called sibling lover. It's that detail about this particular Ptolemaic king is more prevalent than the actual scriptural legacy he wrote. But we still out here just being but his translation, oh my gosh, it's got to be perfect, right? So I'm not here to knock the Septuagint. I'm just saying, y'all, like we need to take all these books out of like off the floating pedestal of like the floating idol that I think a lot of people have made it into. I'm like, okay, got it. It's a guide that I can use. I need to consult this version and every other version I can get my hands on, because we're talking about a story 3 languages removed from the speaker, thousands of years removed from the events at hand. You know, people all know, well, do you think that this is like, well, what do you think about this book? Is that bad? So should we throw out this, then this? It's like, listen, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying it's okay not to be green. It's okay to be born, but not born yesterday. You know what I mean? It's okay not to just believe everything we're told because the officials said it. The officials said it, so it's got to be. When it comes to discernment and street smarts and just understanding how mafias and moguls move, you know, that's a particular gift of discernment as well. So I'm not here to I don't want to beat a dead horse, but week number 2 was spent mostly talking about the Bible, how we got it, and what to make of that. And so as a conclusion, or bringing that back around, I really want people to know we're not here to bash the Bible. We're here to just explain this is what we're dealing with. So let's put our heads together and try to get to the core of what the Holy Spirit's collectively telling us all. But I'm ready to graduate past middle school with the whole God said it's perfect. I mean, that guy over there who says he represents God said it's perfect, so therefore it must be. Okay. Week number 3 was all of us talking all about the sacrificial system, and we call it sacrifice, priest versus prophet, and the sacrificial system. And I was like, what's that noise? It's just my chair squeaking. The reason why I think that particular week was profound, and why we spoke on what we spoke about in that order, is because I knew after we had done the first week, all right, it's time to start talking about Paul. The key problem with Christianity is their complete adherence to the words of Paul and not the words of Jesus. But in order to do that, I want to set up how Paul's entire premise falls flat if the sacrificial system falls flat. Now, Jesus' entire premise does not fall flat at all if the sacrificial system is not legitimate. In fact, Jesus' premise bypasses the need for a sacrificial system in an ultimate sense, because if you're actually being obedient to Jesus' words, there's no need for a atoning sacrifice in any regard for your sin offering or anything like that. And in the sense of his obedience and his adherence, right? Anytime he's asked, in Matthew 19 or in the other locations where he's asked, hey, what do we got to do to gain eternal life? He never mentions sacrifice, right? So as far as Jesus is concerned, how you get to heaven and how you gain eternal life has nothing to do with the Jewish sacrificial system. According to Paul, it has everything to do, because it requires that Jesus be this character, this individual inside of this sacrificial model that died for your sins and for the sins of the world. That the same world that Jesus said few will find life. So he died for the sins of the billions of people that won't find life, according to him. You see what I'm saying? So that's why we went and we spent so many hours, I think 6 hours, on the second week talking about this is the sacrificial system model, y'all. I'm pretty sure nobody's actually spent any time conducting a ritual animal sacrifice, have you? Have you? You haven't actually spent any time conducting a true ritual animal sacrifice. Because if you had, you would understand that this is not a pretty or peaceful scene. It's very chaotic. It's very bloody. It's not easy. The animals don't just sit there and lay over and just hit me quick. You know, they don't do that. There's feces, there's urine, there's rambunctiousness, there's bull in the china shop, especially if that bull realizes he's about to die, because there's thousands of other bulls on the chopping block right in front of him. I shared the story of a personal friend who had gone through a similar situation. And when this individual shared with me about their time, it really floored me as to how I really never sat and imagined what an actual sacrifice must have looked like. But it was all in a season where I was rereading and reinvestigating the Bible, beginning to remove all my rose-colored glasses around what I was told the text meant or said or explained, and just started looking at it for myself. And when I'm doing that, I'm going, well, number one, your tabernacle in the wilderness seems incredibly beautiful, but I have no clue how, logistically speaking, you were able to sacrifice all of what's commanded here in this particular chapter of Leviticus alone, much less all the others, in such a small space with such relatively few high priests or chief priests that could conduct these sacrifices. And that's when I found the work of several others who had been doing this research long before me, saying, yeah, no, I'm pretty sure God does not actually want or need them. In fact, when you look through all of these prophets, they make the case for that. Now, we get common feedback, and one of the feedback we've got on that particular video is, well, that's not true. God, of course, ordained sacrifices. He just didn't like it when Israel was sacrificing without a contrite heart. But I've heard that 1,000 times over. No prophet ever says that, though. That's why I'm telling y'all be reading stuff into the text. And when I say y'all be, I mean even me at one point in my life, right? I said it my whole life. Like, people who come with that reply is like... I've been saying that reply since before you were born, okay? So you're not schooling me on anything I haven't heard already. But it's kind of like, it's another example of how we tend to, we're told that it's infallible. We are. So we see in Leviticus where it says, slaughter for yourself a bull of 1 year, perfect, blemish-free for this. Do this with the entrails, do this with the blood. Do this, consume it, burn it all by fire. We see that. Over here, I see in Jeremiah 7, I see in Amos chapter 5, I did not speak to your fathers concerning burnt offering and sacrifices in the wilderness. Who asked this of you? Did you offer me these in the wilderness, O house of Israel? This is all in Amos 5, Jeremiah 7. We talk about a lot of this in chapter 3. And I remember going, this is what happens. People see this. I did not speak to your fathers concerning sacrifices. And then over here they say, oh, well, it says slaughter for yourself this, this, and this. And they go, okay, well, this book's infallible. So even though God says through Jeremiah, I did not speak to you about this. And over here in the days of the Exodus of Moses, literally when you flip one page from Exodus to Leviticus, it says, and slaughter for yourself, da, 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 da. And so the reader is left going, okay, I think I know what's going on. So God did ask for it. See, it says it right there. He did ask, but he didn't like it because they had a contrite heart. They didn't have a contrite heart. That's what it is. That works. That way, both of these statements can be true, and the book can still be infallible. And I don't have to actually work through the cognitive dissonance that maybe one is right and not the other. Or maybe one is inserted by a priesthood class that has a bloodlust, like this taste for blood. And the other is by one in a series of prophets who was constantly warning Israel about this priesthood class that had a taste for blood. Nobody wants to actually admit that, because then the book isn't infallible and you got to go through all these what ifs. So it's easier to say, well, okay, Jeremiah and Amos and Micah and David and Isaiah, they probably all said the same things because Israel was just being like loosey-goosey with it. Even though it never says, Israel, I actually want these sacrifices. I just want you to offer them with a contrite heart. It never says that. People read that into the text and they want to tell me I'm wrong because I'm just actually reading the text for what it says. See? So we spent a tremendous amount of time that third week talking about the concept of how when you get into some of the ancient texts, the work on the Ebionites, my other book about Moses and the original Torah, you find that there was an original and it did get changed. It absolutely just changed over time. And it's not exclusive to the Jewish Torah or Pentateuch, rather. It's like every religion suffers this type of thing. In fact, the guy in that Moses in the original Torah book, that's the whole first chapter of that book is him saying, hey, you guys, just so we're clear, things don't start small and then grow into detail. Sorry, things don't start detailed and then grow into small. They into simplified, oversimplified states. They start very small and then they get all this stuff padded and added and become complex over time. So he's essentially saying, look at every religion: Buddhism, Christianity, Zoroastrianism, Judaism, all of them. He lists them all. And he's like, all of these started with a much more basic thing, and then thousands of years has padded and added a lot to the case. So when you get back to the original, or at least toward the original, you find, okay, got it. Like the priesthood class was not always to be trusted. I mean, and the same is true for today. You see what I'm saying? You can't just trust the priesthood class of 2023, the pastors and the clergy, the RCC, or the National Council of Churches. You can't just trust the Southern Baptist Coalition, the Freemasonic, Southern, whatever. You can't simply just trust that the leadership be established. I mean, like, that's just not how control and corruption work. So we spent some time on that week because I felt it very necessary to really clarify for people, hey, it's going to seem strange, but I don't think that God ever wanted or needed us to go kill an animal in order to appease him. I don't think he needed us to kill an animal to teach us a lesson that the wages of sin are death. I think the best way to actually uphold that lesson is to actually have you die if you screw up. I was thinking about this after we released that. I'm thinking, of course, I don't know why I didn't mention this in the live, but if I'm a father, the best way I can keep my kid from ever playing in the garage or the tool shed where he shouldn't, or getting into something he shouldn't, is to let him get on up in there one good time and shoot himself in the foot with the shotgun or something. You know, you see what I'm saying? Not that I actually want my kid to shoot himself in the foot with a shotgun, but it's like, listen, kid, I done told you 1,000 times. I'm not going to tell you no more. I'm going to just let you bump your head. And when you do, you're going to realize that I was telling you what you should have been listening to at the beginning. You see what I'm saying? That is the best way to keep a kid out of a thing, is to let them bump their head and they go, oh, wow, okay, got it. Yeah, I got it. Don't play with Dad's chainsaw. Got it. And the same goes with the Torah. It's like the best way to keep Israel from actually not licentiously hoeing themselves to death is to make sure that death is always nipping at their heels should they disobey. The second you remove that and you say, okay, well, all right, you deserve to die, but like, just let this animal die instead, or you deserve to die, but let's kill Jesus instead. It removes your desire and your need from acting right because the fear of death isn't behind you anymore. Oh, word? I don't have to actually, it's like saying if I'm driving a motorcycle 100 miles an hour and I have a magic button that can just keep me from falling out, I'm just going to be reckless. My magic Jesus button or my lamb that it was slain button, you know, I'm just going to act reckless. The second I know, okay, I can't act reckless because I might die. I got kids and wife at the house. That is what keeps me from acting reckless. You see what I'm saying? So in the same regard, that is what keeps people in check when they have the wages of sin being death at their deathbed. Israel, as a nation state, ancient Israel, had several cycles of people dying. You know what I'm saying? Like Israel, given this blood sacrifice model, did not absolve them from dying in any acute sense. It definitely did not absolve them from captivity in any acute sense. And it certainly didn't absolve them from getting obliterated off the map more than twice now. You see what I'm saying? So it's kind of like, I at first didn't know how to really couch this thing, but as I've kind of come and put together, okay, now I have a better framework of how we even got to this text from Adam to Noah to these major mile markers over the conversation. I go, oh, got it. So at some point, the management system just came in and said, all right, we're management here. We're new on the block. This is the way things are moving from now forward, okay? So that's just how it happened. And then we read stuff here at 2023 that 1023 might have been there or maybe not. But at the year 23 may have not been there at all. But we don't really have a way of knowing what got inserted at any given point 1,400 years or less before a printing press was invented for anybody to actually print this stuff off and have a copy in their own home that they can guarantee was not edited by the Roman state that would have shot him and murdered him anyway if they even called it out. So the sacrificial system, it was important for us to challenge this because so much of Jesus being equal to a sacrifice, or Jesus having his finished work on the cross being your salvation model, I needed to challenge that up front so that the following week when I came presenting Paul's gospel versus Jesus's gospel, people weren't left just without like any sort of platform to even know where I'm coming from when it comes to Jesus's gospel, because so many people think that Jesus's gospel was him coming to die for your sins, and that go and preach the good news that I guess I've died yet, but I haven't totally died for your sins yet, because when Jesus said, go and make disciples of all men, that was like before the death. You see what I'm saying? So I realized, I was like, okay, I need to set this up because I want people to be really clear that Jesus had a whole salvation conversation, and it didn't have anything to do with what Paul was saying or the sacrificial system. It was simply righteousness and right living and right acting. And I returned to the original truth that had become, stuff had gotten typed on top, that when followed, puts you in a place and in a state of walking a life of salvation out as it is, as right now, where the kingdom of heaven is already at hand. Like, you're already in it. It's not this destination you get to at the end of your life. You are a part of the kingdom of heaven actively when you're following Jesus's words, which include healing, which include restoration of both spiritual health and physical health, all kinds of stuff like that. So that was week 3, chapter 3. Chapter 4 was us going, all right, let's get to the bottom of your boy. Shaul, the guy whose Hebrew name means hell and whose Latin name means the least. The guy that teaches most people not to follow Torah before you say, oh, no, he doesn't. Ask anybody who doesn't actually observe Torah why they don't, and they will all tell you because of Paul's verses. I mean, they might not tell you because of Paul's verses, but they will say the Bible says here, here, and here. We don't need to. And the here, here, and here will only, always, ever be Paul. Okay? So the second you want to say, hey, I think you should start following God's law, you're met with nothing but Paul as an excuse for why you shouldn't. This is why I say Paul teaches men not to follow the Torah. And Jesus apparently said those who teach men not to follow the Torah will be seen as least in the kingdom of heaven. So ask me why his Latin name means least and his Hebrew name means hell or the grave. Y'all hear me? Are you hear me though? Are you hearing me? So there's that. Then we talked about how just in general, Christianity is Paulianity with Jesus as the mascot. Now, again, to this weekend, we're kind of a little bit more subdued. We're not as hyped with it, but I'm about to, all of those previous discussions about Paul are already up on Jennifer's Instagram, and I have just completed the first 2 of the 9 hours, getting all the graphics and all the verse references and all the intros and chapter markers and everything done. And I'm about to probably upload that one tonight after this live is done here. But that whole discussion last week was such a long time coming, because for us, it was the start of where we began to re-audit our faith. Again, to this week, it's really just about recapping and giving us like, okay, so where does that land us? Like, where does that leave us type of stuff. And then we're going to go into some questions here in just a second. So again, if you're new and you just joined, please do toss a little question in the question box, and we will try and answer them. Well, when I say we will try to answer them, I will physically click the button here in a second and answer them for you. Because Jennifer is down there dealing with not 1 baby, but 2 babies that seem to just be at their wits' end. So we spent last week talking about how we believe that there is a significant false apostle in the Bible, and it's not Jesus. In fact, it's the opposite of Jesus. It's literally an antichrist. I won't necessarily say the antichrist, but it is someone whose words in very many key instances are very much antithetical to Christ's words. So there's that. But this individual, I believe, was placed in the Bible as a test. I don't think that the corruptions are just willy-nilly. I do believe God is in control. I really do. I also believe that the truth is in the Bible, and I do believe that the key to life is in the Bible. I also, believe that there is two gospels in the Bible. The truth, it's like the garden. I mean, like, why did he even allow the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in the garden, right? Ostensibly, I don't know. I'm just hypothetically giving a suggestion to test, to say, hey, listen, it's not quite free will if you don't have the option to choose the wrong answer. So here, I'll give you two options. You choose. One of the answers is wrong. That's kind of almost like a Lego block required for free will to even be part of the conversation. Because if I don't have any option to choose a wrong answer, is it really, am I operating under a premise of free will? Maybe, maybe not. You can have a philosophical boxing match back and forth for years on that. But for the same reason he allowed the tree of the knowledge of the good and evil in the garden, it's the same reason he allowed the individual of the knowledge of Yeshua and himself in the book, in his garden called this Bible, if you want to even call it that. Because it is like a test. It's saying, hey, are you listening? What is it a challenge at all if you pop out of some amniotic fluid in a womb one day in the 90s or 80s or maybe 2000s, and the most popular thing on earth is the thing you're born into? And that most popular thing has a book that tells you everything you need to know about that thing, about Christianity, about God, about how to model one's life after being a true and tried and official, most popular religion in the world, Christian. And the book is so immaculately protected and divinely protected that there's no rightly dividing, there's no Berean study, there's no challenging, there's no exegesis needed. You just need to read it at face value and it'll tell you all the answers. And there's nothing bad in it and everything checks out, even though all those people over there say not everything checks out. See what I'm saying? Even though 2 Peter has something to say about twisting them to your own destruction. But, what does Peter know, right? If he even wrote 2 Peter. So I kind of just look at it and I go, I'm not mad at people. I just understand that, like myself, none of us were taught to just challenge what we didn't know we should challenge out the gate until we're introduced to the reality that we're just not handed this Jesus platter of perfection. And when you do, you realize, okay, got it. So there's a code going on here. And we do need to search this out. And there is the true thread here, because you can look at this book and you can tell that it's not like leading people to hell. It's not like a book that's designed to destroy your life. You see what I'm saying? The overwhelming takeaway is positive, right? There is one individual in here who seems to have consolations and suggestions that don't quite seem to line up with this primary centralized figure named Jesus. But, people don't quite know what to make of that for the most part. So that is what the basis of last week was about, is saying, hey, look, take a line down the middle of the page. You got Paul over here, you got Jesus over here. Paul speaks about these things. Jesus speaks about the same things in this way. Jesus commends the church of Ephesus for kicking out the false prophets. Paul says the city of Ephesus kicked him out. In fact, all those in Asia rejected him. Ephesus happens to be in Asia. Paul says an idol, an idol's nothing. When it comes to eat, those weak vegetarians, they just, if you gonna cause them to stumble, okay, sure, I guess, fine, whatever, don't eat it. But we know an idol is nothing, so whether you eat or you don't eat doesn't make no difference, don't make no never mind, right? That's what Paul says. Jesus said Jesus was a whole entire Nazarene, so they didn't even eat meat in general. So there was no possible way he could eat meat sacrificed to idols, because he just didn't eat meat at all. But he speaks in the book of Revelation about those he detests, who like Balaam put a stumbling block before the children of Israel and taught them to eat meat sacrificed to idols. Jesus warns against that. Paul actually does that. Jesus warns that those people who teach men not to follow Torah will be called least, Paul actually teaches men that it's not really, you don't really have to follow the tutor now that Messiah's come. And then admits himself, oh, I'm the least of the power, I'm the least. He's aware of his own name and his meaning, the name's meaning too. I could probably rattle off 100 off the top of my head. I've been studying this for so long. But the point of tonight is not to go back and belabor another 9-hour talk like I did last week. It's to say, I didn't see it until somebody showed it to me. And I understand that it's not the easiest news to hear. I get that. I really do. And so I try to, as nicely as I possibly can, phrase it to you. Hey, you guys, there's a false apostle in the Bible. And I'm pretty sure you're not going to like who I say it is because your favorite everything is built off this dude. And, you know, when it comes to being a part of the few there be that find it, how being born into the world's largest religion on earth, how that clicks and how that's supposed to make sense with the few there be that find it never really added up to me. Now I stand as a 39-year-old and I go, okay, got it. So everybody's involved with this Neo-Babylonian kind of watered down ISIS cult thing, Dionysus cult thing going on. And they all think that they're following Jesus, but they're actually following the words of someone else who never even met Jesus. Unless you want to say that the Jesus that showed up in the light where the real Jesus never... First of all, let's not get it twisted that if Paul's story was legit, it should have been God showing up to him, not Jesus, right? Jesus had his thing and he left. Jesus didn't show up to nobody else on earth, but except for like in real life, you see what I'm saying? But if we were really to even be buying Paul's story as legit, it should have been like Yahweh talking to him, not Jesus. But I brought that whole chapter 4 around, and we started talking about what we spoke about last week, because we realized if people don't draw this discrepancy, hear this challenging thing, research this matter out, audit what they think they know, reread the words of Jesus, reread the words of Paul, open up 2 tabs, compare them, get to the Greek, get to the Hebrew, get to the Aramaic, like really understand the culture, do whoever wrote 2 Peter, like really take heed to what they say in 2 Peter. For those who don't have a great understanding of the history or the foundation of our scripture or our faith, might take Paul's words and twist them to their own destruction. Please heed that warning, because the second I actually got a solid foundation on the history of the Hebrew faith, I'm like, okay, got it. So there's absolutely no way that it's a trainer that we should ignore now that Messiah's come. Okay, got it. You know what I'm saying? So another reason I think the last week's discussion was very important is so that when people see this systematic dismantling of the Christian faith it's already happening. You'd be blind as a bat if you haven't been able to see the clear institutional scaffolding and all the foundations just going like this, like just teeter-tottering on 2 little Jenga pieces like this. You know, y'all play Jenga with the 2 bottom pieces. That's what Christianity and basically all the world's religions are right now. Ain't nobody buying it except for all the super duper adherents who've never spent a month outside of the affinity of that religion to evaluate the religion. See what I'm saying? Ain't nobody on earth buying it except for the people who've been so glued into the story from the inside that they've never stopped and said, let me back up and actually look at this critically. Let me audit this. And in order to do that properly, like a good auditing agent doesn't, if I'm being audited and the auditing agent is my cousin that comes to, oh, hey, Chris, I didn't realize I was auditing you today. And that is their job to actually audit myself for IRS reasons or whatever. They're not going to do a great job auditing because they have a bias. They're like, well, I don't really want you to be found guilty. So I'm just going to like, let's just change it. Okay, you had how many? 10? Okay, we'll say 100. We just put another 0. It's fine. You see what I'm saying? The audit is great when the auditor comes in cold face. He don't know who you are. Hi there. Would you like some tea? Let's begin, right? That's when you know the audit's going to be legit, when there's no emotional connection to the thing you're auditing. If you have an emotional connection to the thing you're auditing, you simply are not in a position to see it clearly. That's why I believe that a lot of non-doctors saw through COVID so clearly. That's why I think a lot of laymen and people who weren't doctors saw through COVID so clearly, because our career wasn't on the line if we decided we disagreed with the CDC or the AMA. Them over there, y'all career was on the line if y'all were like, well, I mean, I see the clinical trials had like 40 people and then like 20 of the 40 felt bad, like, but I guess. What did y'all say? 99% success rate with nothing, but I gotta take it anyway just in case. Like, I don't know. I'm a doctor. I can see why on paper it just doesn't make any sense, but the CDC's barking in one ear and the AMA and Bill Gates in my other ear tell me why it's so safe and effective. So I guess I'll take it because, I'm supposed to trust this industry that I still owe $280,000 in student loans to. Whereas all the rest of us were like, heck no. Like, nah, y'all can fire me. I'll sit right here at home. Nope, not interested, because we don't have an emotional dog in the fight. So we can just look and be like, they're lying. They're lying. Come on now. Doctors had a harder time seeing that. Some of them did. Not every doctor. Some doctors saw it just fine. But by and large, especially your corporate institutional doctor, especially if they hadn't really challenged themselves with their industry up to this point. Okay? So in the same sense, theologically speaking, it took us stepping away from church, wanting to know who God was, but really disenfranchising ourselves from the Christian conversation altogether. And be like, all right, God, I love you and I'm willing to follow you, ride or die. Just tell me what's the truth. Help me learn this. And then when you do that and you earnestly seek it and you study a matter out and you factor in street smart context, not just context that the scholars tell you went on in the first century, context that even people who challenge the scholarly view tell you went on in the first century. Like people who challenge the mainstream science view about what's going on with regarding to pandemics and preventative inoculations. When you do that, you go, interesting. Got it. The story is more complex than I imagined. Of course it is. So this last week was spent me presenting 20 solid, maybe 30 solid points, takeaway points. 17 of them were verse discrepancies. Certain what I call Paul-anomalies. I presented what I call Paul-anomalies, just anomalies about Paul, things that are like, does this actually make sense to you? Right? God said, nobody's going to see, let me back that up. Jesus said, nobody's going to see me again on earth until I'm back. And when I am, I'll be seen as lightning is seen from the east to the west. And then Paul shows up and sees Jesus a few years after he said this to his disciples, to his apostles. And then Paul goes on, and the Jesus who shows up to Paul goes on to quote Dionysus, a secular pagan, Greek demigod. And then we're given the rest of the story just encapsulated and glued in. And what I'm really appealing, and that's why I said at the beginning of this, I'm appealing to people's humanity. I really just want you to just sit with what it says. Don't take what I'm saying. I mean, I'm just reintroducing the information, but I'm not inventing this. I'm just looking at Acts 9, looking at Acts 22, looking at Acts 26, and going, there's 3 different versions of the story here. 3 different versions. I mean, yeah, Acts 22 and 26 match up about this one thing, but not about this. And Acts 9 differs in this way. And then 20, you see what I'm saying? So this is why I think we've approached it in this way, and why today I was like, let me just pump the brakes and let me kind of just do a bunch of repeating so that people can, who have been listening, can be like, okay, I think I'm hearing what you're saying, Chris. I think I'm picking up. Our heart is not to diminish God, Jesus, or the Bible. It's to simply say, y'all, we headed into a big trick, and the trick is going to get tricky. And if you think the trick that we just now finding out about was tricky, you ain't seen nothing compared to this new trick, because the new trick is a religious trick. And it requires that everything you think you trust about the text that you think just showed up how they all tell you it did is authentic. And it's going to require your blind allegiance to kind of really fall prey to the deception. Well, that's not true. People will be making up their own minds and being deceived. Plenty, I'm sure. But Same for the people who have this blind allegiance, and that goes for all religions. It's not just Christianity. But I'm zeroing in on Christianity because Christianity is what I've spent the most amount of time investigating. It's where I grew up in. It's what's near and dear to my heart. It's what's got most of my friends and family feeling some type of way. And we just wanted to say, listen, you guys, like, please hear our heart. It's not always easy for us to talk about this. Like, sometimes I have a big knot in my stomach before I do these videos because I know that what I'm saying is going to hurt feelings kind of sometimes. I don't want to hurt your feelings. I'm really not trying to. I'm not here to argue with people. If you disagree, cool. If you really want me to prove myself, ask me nicely. But if you come at me on some ego, like, I'm just going to ignore you because I don't have to prove nothing to you. I'm not here to fight with nobody. I'm here to say, this is what I've learned. And if you want to see what's led me there, I can provide for you those breadcrumbs, but I can't take 9 years worth of information and condense it even into 9 hours. Really that effective. I mean, I totally tried last week. Woo, that was long. But I can't really do it. I can just give you all my cliff notes and my napkins and my little scribbles and say, start digging, yourself. So that kind of encapsulates where we've spoken. We will be talking a little bit more about some things regarding our faith and what we've learned, who we think Jesus, what we think he was really trying to say, how that relates to us today. But right now I want to take a few questions and I want to address a few comments and just some things to help y'all watching know, like, we're not talking in a vacuum. I'm here to have an open dialogue. It's just tough. Like, it was a pretty busy last couple of weeks for me for work. So if I don't get back to you or see your DM or whatever right away, it's not you. I promise it's not you. It's just a lot going on. So with that said, let me see if I can. Oh, thank you, Rocky's mom. I appreciate that. I mean, I really did. She said, you do an incredible job. Very gracious. Thank you. That really means a lot because sometimes, I mean, Jen will tell you, I'll just be like, I don't know what to say. Right? Me, right? The guy who can talk for 9 whole straight hours. I don't know what to say because I don't want to scare people away from seeking God, but I can't pretend like everybody's got this like leaflet, the lovely leaflet of life just wafting down from everybody's HVAC system to land right on their shawl, right on their like little lap here. Just, it's all perfect with no tatters or tears, no challenges, no deceptions, nothing. I can't pretend like that. And I can't sit there and watch all these major religious figures just get pew, 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 knocked off one after another, knowing that their whole point is to dismantle the thing that they mantled. They set up the Masonic structure and got all these hoes and licentious pastors to be in the leadership of these things, specifically so that when it's time to pull the Jenga piece and crumble the cookie crumbles to their liking, and they can create this war that they're trying to, where atheists are like, ha, 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 see, I told you so, and Christians are like, wait, what? But like, I thought we were supposed to get raptured. Wait, why is that Jesus hanging out with Satan and with Muhammad and with Buddha? I thought he was supposed to be separate. And nobody knows what to make of anything because they've all been given the primary narrative or the counter narrative, and now the counter narrative is crashing into the primary narrative. And the counter narrative is, you are God, Jesus equal God, you equal Jesus, you equal God because you have Christ's consciousness. Here I am talking about a Jewish person, and I'm never mentioning a single Jewish or Hebrew concept. Christ consciousness, Christ consciousness, Christ consciousness. That's what's moving into. Everything is Jesus. Jesus is like Jesus Christ superstar. Talking about Jesus is like the most famous politicians in the world rock with Jesus. You see what I'm saying? There's nothing fringe at all about Jesus. There's nobody hated for his namesake whatsoever. I might get a little hate because I want to call him Yeshua and claim he's not God and claim he didn't die for your sins. He came and he worked and lived a life so that you would follow him, so that your butt would be saved because you were obedient, not because of some animal sacrifice model where he doesn't even apply. People might hate on me for that, but nobody's hating on anything Christian regarding anything, mainstream or fringe, because it's literally the most popular religion on earth. Okay, moving on right along. Okay, so I can see some of these comments here. Okay, I see. Okay, I see this Nina's comment. I'm still trying to decipher the dynamic. We know Jesus came to reintroduce the Torah, but can you unpack some? Sure. So, and I'm gonna highlight these other questions in the question box here in just a second. So reintroduce is maybe not the best word because it was introduced. Like the Jews of Jesus's day definitely had a Torah. The better way to put it is probably to clarify or to refine or to, maybe you can say redefine, but maybe refine is probably the best word because it's not so much an introduction that they didn't have. It's simply a application that had got so far away from the point of the Torah that it was completely in doctrines of men territory by this point. So reintroduce, again, not maybe I get your question, and it is a good question. It's just more, I think that it was more of a refinement. Take the death penalty, take the stoning penalty. So everybody knows the story of Jesus, of the people like, hey, this lady committed adultery. And Jesus saying, hey, okay, so he who is without sin cast the first stone. Everybody loves that story. I remember we all said it, read it 100 times. Technically, according to the Torah that exists even today, she should have been stoned. And you can't necessarily say Jesus was violating Torah for saying, well, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. Well, it's not quite a violation, but by the looks of it, she should have been stoned. So when you find that outside of the Bible, in the writings of a lot of first century haters and lovers of these Ebionites, this group, they did not think that all the elements of the Torah of their day were legitimate. And some of the things that they challenged were, in particular, the death penalty, the idea that you stone somebody for even something like adultery. And the I guess through line or the silver lining was that God calls everyone to repentance. He suffers not that no man die, but that everyone come to salvation and repentance. That, sometimes mistakes can be made, right? Not to say that this lady was not doing what they was accusing her of doing. But, occasionally misjudgments and wrongful convictions happen, right? And the Nazarenes of the first century believed that certain elements of the death penalty were not part of what God initially said. Meaning, you're not supposed to be committing no adultery, okay? But if you do, go ask for forgiveness, stop what you're doing, go and sin no more. You got this many, stop all that. And turn back to right. And in fact, go right all the wrongs of the men that you have hurt. You see what I'm saying? That was the solution, not give me a rock. Oh, fast pitch, straight to the noggin. All right, she's dead, cart her out. They weren't actually supposed to be doing that. So when Jesus is saying, well, hold on now, y'all, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. Some people have rightly, I believe, applied that to saying, hey, look, he's kind of like, not directly, right? He's not he's not saying the death penalty in the Torah is illegitimate. Therefore, let he who's without sin cast the first stone. He's not saying that. But he kind of is in practice. You see what I'm saying? In practice. If it was really such that the high priests were only supposed to eat the showbread, and David wasn't, or his men weren't, nor Yeshua or his disciples, you can kind of make the case that he's violating Torah by eating the bread in the temple or in the that was reserved for the priests. Now, separate conversation about whether he's priest, order Melchizedek, all that stuff. But this was something that the Pharisees were even like, oh, you're eating the. Well, did David not eat it? Right? You see what I'm saying? It's another example of him saying, listen, y'all done added and padded and added and stacked and put all this extra on top. Death penalty? Okay. How about this? Whichever one of y'all hasn't seen, y'all throw the stone first. And it was the simplest and most pacifist way for all the people there to be like, okay, fine. And y'all want to act like there's not things that the Christian church or let's just say the American government doesn't do that are outside of the Constitution that the American government's supposed to do. Executive orders are a great example of that. Okay, that's not a thing in the Constitution where the president just to say screw the judicial branch and the legislature or the Senate and the House. Screw it. I'm signing the EO, executive order. It is. It's a decree. That's the thing that the American politicians exploit now, but that's not how the basis of the articles of the checks and balances of this government was set up. So it's not a far-fetched thing to suggest that, maybe the chief priest and the high priest were like doing some extra. Same thing with the like, hey, I know you're supposed to be taking care of your parents when they're in their old age, but how about you just pay the temple some money and we'll take care of them for you, right? Also not in Torah, but also something that the temple system of Jesus's day was doing. So that's really the answer, Nina, is that he came to say, listen, there's some basics here that definitely apply, right? Don't murder, don't kill, don't commit adultery. But all this way down the line, stone the person who does, like, no. How about let he who was without sin cast the first stone, okay? Didn't think so, okay? You see what I'm saying? And in that regard, Jesus was saying, listen, I know what the deal is with regard to the original instructions. And I don't think it was exclusive to Jesus. I think a lot of those Nazarenes really knew what was up. I just think that it's been lost in the sauce over time. So moving right along. Ooh, somebody asked me a great question. Okay, so somebody asked me, what do I think about Kabbalah? So I'll answer that question. And I'm going to do so at the same time as I address some comments. So I will get to these questions in the question box, absolutely. But I'm going to do so because the question about Kabbalah actually covers some territory of a different series of questions I meant to address regarding the Kabbalah. So where is it? Okay, so like I said, we put these videos out. It's been a month. If you go back on Jen's page, you'll see all these comments under the live postings, not her little snippets about the YouTube postings, but under the original, however long they were, live stream, you'll see all these comments. And this was about 2 weeks ago, I guess it was. Not quite 2 weeks, a little under 2 weeks ago. I'm at work on set shooting, and my wife is texting me like, hey, yo, our page is blowing up. You know the individual. How do you want to address this? And this is a person, I have some of the screenshots here because I'm not going to address all 40 whatever zillion comments that was sent my way, just a handful of them. But I remember at the time being like, okay, like who is, so she sent me some screenshots and I'm sitting there like, okay, I'm going to address this once on video right now because the individual who comments on these videos is somebody who we actually know in real life. And for all of, how one can handle a thing. I personally don't particularly think that this was handled that well. And I'm not mad about it or anything, but I certainly think that, people say a lot of stuff publicly when they could come to you privately, especially because this person has my number. They had no problem coming to me when they wanted my help, connected them with some individuals that could further something they was working on. I got plenty of direct texts from that, but when it comes to challenging my theology, I don't even get tagged as much as an @ mention. I get it's all on my wife's page, right? I get dudes coming to talk passive aggressively to me through her page about things that ain't nobody was talking to them about. But the question about Kabbalah comes up. So in our video regarding, I think this was the one about the sacrificial system, we put forth our ideas, and the comment says this: of course, Yeshua is not a sacrifice under the Levitical system. The sacrificial system of the Torah is part of Olam Hazeh. The sacrificial system that's part of the Torah, as part of Olam Hazeh, has everything to do with the lower worlds in the Jewish mystical understanding. Yeshua's sacrifice is not according to the Levitical system. Yeshua's sacrifice, in essence, his self-sacrifice through laying down his own life, is on the level of Olam Haba, the world to come, which is connected to the higher worlds with mystical Judaism. This is what Hebrews is trying to explain. Okay, the reason why I have a problem with this comment, because the person did not come to me directly, nor did they really actually watch what you're presenting fully, is because they're using the Kabbalah, Kabbalistic teachings and premises to justify their definition of the point of Jesus' sacrifice. So my only point was, well, clearly a lamb is not a man, right? So if you're talking Jesus being a lamb who was slain for the sins of the world, that doesn't actually add up because he's not a lamb, he's a man. You can't take a chicken and call it a lamb. Can't take an aardvark and call it a lamb. So you can't take a man and call it a lamb. What this person is explaining is, well, of course he wasn't a sacrifice under the Levitical order. That has to do with the lower worlds, according to the Jewish mystical understanding. What he's talking about, the self-sacrifice of laying down his own life, was apparently Jesus laying down his own life somehow applies in the higher Jewish mystical orders to your sins being forgiven. But the point of why this comment made me roll my eyes when I read it is because what he's doing is he's using text in the Zohar and in other Kabbalistic writings to explain what the reader's supposed to be understanding from the Bible, right? We're supposed to be able to read the Bible and say, okay, this makes sense. A plus B equals C. And the Torah is apparently part of the lower, has to do with the lower world, the instructions on the lower world. So why Jesus' atonement under this model that I don't actually think it was, but like what the whole point of what our video was saying, it doesn't make any sense that he could even possibly be the lamb slain for your sins, because he's not an actual lamb or an actual goat or an actual bull. He's a man. And those species and the animals so specific in this particular sacrifice model. And when I read comments like this, it underscores why I think people need to get real clear about the Kabbalah. Number one, this guy, his name is Derek. Maybe you're familiar with him, maybe not. But Derek, he runs I don't want to say he runs. He's part of a leadership team of a Torah group, not that far from where we live. We've communed with him in the past, participated in Sukkot, and I think maybe Passover or Shavuot or something like that years ago. But I became very aware that him and a handful of others in that particular group rely quite heavily on the Kabbalah to make sense of their application, we'll say. This is where, people are going to have to agree to disagree. I don't personally trust the Kabbalah. I don't trust people who trust the Kabbalah. I don't trust that the Jewish mystical or any sort of mysticism is required to make sense of what Jesus tells us should be something simple that a child could understand. I don't think that there is a clear enough distinction. I've heard people explain who are sympathetic to the Kabbalah. Well, there's the Hollywood Kabbalah and then there's the true Kabbalah, where there's a righteous origin, ostensibly, that then got separately corrupted into this Hollywood thing. I don't quite buy that, because I don't see any injunctions in the word of Moses or Jesus or God or Enoch or Abraham or Elijah or Samuel or David or anybody to consult anything outside of the Torah. Not commentary on the Torah, not rabbinical traditions about the Torah, not extra books that relate to the theme of what the Torah is supposed to be speaking about. Just the instructions, just God's instructions, right? Not some other writer's mystical expression of what they think about God's instructions, just God's instructions. So, you say the word Kabbalah and it has drip to it. Some people either find that drip enticing and alluring and, a hidden mystery that should be sought out. Others find that drip quite satanically infused. I happen to be in the latter category. I have been, this has been presented to me years ago as something favorable and something worth looking into. And I have done that a little bit, but enough to know that I'm not investing a tremendous amount of time into what clearly is the curriculum of the beast. Now, people will say, well, hold on now. That's just the Hollywood version. That's not the other version. And that's just simply interpretation. That's just personal opinion, because I've worked in and around the Hollywood elites. As far as I know, I'm the only one who knows most of the Hollywood people I know. And what I know more than anything is that what some of the big boys are into is way above pay grades of me and you. Meaning they don't, like the Hollywood version is not the cheap fringe version of Kabbalah, if you will. It is most likely the core or an extrapolation of the core of that belief structure. Now, like I mentioned with Paul, there's no such thing as a good deception without a ton of truth laced in. So I'm not sitting there saying that every premise that's Kabbalistic in origin is wrong. I'm simply saying I don't put any weight to anything based in the Kabbalah. And the second people want to come at me and tell me, hey, Jesus was actually a Kabbalistic mystic, I shut you off. Because I don't think you're a mean person necessarily. I just simply think your discernment meter is not where mine is. And I see absolutely no desire, injunction, suggestion, or command to investigate a series of texts that have nothing to do with Torah. I mean, they claim they're all about Torah, but really, not really. That will help define the way I think regarding even something as simple as Jesus's sacrifice, right? So when I read this comment at first, I remember being like, he's out here using the Kabbalah to justify a pretty simple biblical premise that even he agrees with me on this point that Jesus can't represent the sacrifice in a Levitical system. But all of the people who listen to this dude probably don't actually know he really trusts and studies the Kabbalah. He be keeping it a secret, Like, I don't ever keep it a secret about what I'm talking about are the basis and the foundations for where I speak. If anybody asks me to show them my stuff, I'll be happy to. And I won't even have any sort of reason to feel some type of way about what you might think of it, other than the fact you might not trust the source. But it's not establishment based. It's like ground level based. Because I've learned all the stuff that comes from the top down is corrupted. All the stuff that comes from the ground up is what's pure. All the stuff all the texts, all the thought process, the schools of thought that come from the top down, especially ones as powerfully applicable as the Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism today. That's not how this works. The purity comes from God individually working through the hearts of men from the ground up, influencing heads of state, influencing movements. The top down is where all the corruption and the deception is. So to answer your question more specifically, I need to go put this thing on the charger or it's going to die. I don't trust it. I don't need it. I don't look at it. Don't like it. I find that it confuses people. I think that people who study the Kabbalah are way more book smart. Every single person I've ever heard talk favorably about the Kabbalah always comes up to me as book smart, but not street smart. Meaning, you read a lot of books, and yeah, you know some things, but boy, is your discernment on empty, bro. Like like I gotta, like I could sell you. I mean, I could. In the streets, you would be stolen from at every opportunity because of how not aware of the hustles of life you seem to be. And it's not just about this one guy, it's several other people. And I've noticed that pattern. It's like, y'all just hear a thing that sounds like right. And you have a niche of people that vouch for a particular body of text or school of thought. And y'all don't ever go to people who honestly challenge that. Y'all just take the protagonist for what they say. And you never take any antagonist's point to any given subject, right? Every subject has people who agree with it or people who disagree with it. If you're only ever listening to the people who agree and you never go to anybody who's critically challenging it, you don't quite know what you're dealing with. That's kind of how every good trick works, if you ask me. So I just don't find the need to give the Kabbalah any lip service or any time. Because that's what Satan and them do. That's what the synagogue of Satan does, is they base their entire moving and shaking off the numerology and the energetic framework established by the Kabbalah. So, that's what they do. Now, I ain't see none of the righteous figures of any of the Abrahamic religions ever doing that. but the mystics do it, right? There's a mysticism expression to every major religion. You got Islam, and you got Islamic mysticism, Sufism. You got Judaism, and you have Jewish mysticism, Kabbalism. You got Christianity, and if you ask me, Christian mysticism might as well be the charismatic expression. It's kind of like magical, mystical, hidden, special expression within the umbrella of Christianity that's often quite very deviant from Orthodox Christianity. So, you know, I'm not even gonna. This guy comments at 40 something separate comments on these videos, and I just simply can't read it all. But you know, I'm just cherry picking another comment here. You know, the video you reference is by David Notary is not a legitimate. So like, that's my other thing. Again, I'm not gonna make this a rant about this one commenter, but I know this guy, right? He's over a decade younger than me. When I was like, he was born, I was like already memorized a third of the Bible, right? It's not about me versus tit for tat. It's not about smarts. And I'm honestly not one of those people who say you have to be old to be wise. I think young people can be very wise about a lot of things. I also think young people can think they know what they're talking about and be dead wrong. And I also know young people can be influenced and impressionable, especially when they book smart and not street smart. So, you know, people come at us and they ask us, oh, well, prove what you're saying. Or, well, I don't trust that this source is legitimate. I didn't ask you what you think. I really don't care what you think. This guy puts out plenty of videos. You ever see me going on his videos, comment about his sources and the legitimacy or lack thereof? No, I just let the Ruach clarify things for his viewers or not. That's what I'm asking the Ruach to do with my viewers. I don't need to prove anything to anybody. So he claims that, you know, one of my sources are not legitimate, but that just shows me that I'm actually barking up the right tree, because that's what every pro-vaxxer says to every anti-vaxxer. Well, that's not a legitimate source. The CDC says this. Okay, and these other people say this. The CDC is not God. I can just choose what I actually want to believe with multiple people saying two opposing things. So it's kind of like the same way. I had a couple of these pulled up, but like I'm going through them and it's like I don't even honestly feel like it's worth my time to address this, because at the end of the day, what most of his comments seem to all have in common is green behind the ears. Hasn't quite learned, like the things that I didn't know when I was in my mid-20s that I now know in my almost 40s. It's the same. It's the world doesn't work how we're told, you know. I know one of the comments was like, hey, you know, they keep these scriptures pretty, where is it? Oh yeah. You must not understand the precision and accountability that copying the Torah must go through in order for it to be considered legitimate. To even suggest that the Torah has changed, even by one iota, does not make sense according to what Yeshua said. But it's kind of like, I'm an adult, right? I don't have to believe that it was corrupted or not in his time. I can read first century writers that say that they said it was. You know what I'm saying? That's the difference. It's like, I tried to be clear that I didn't come in this whole discussion with whims and opinions, that I changed my mind after I saw several different pieces of evidence of other writers saying that the apostles thought this way. And I went, huh? And instead of going, no, they didn't, that's wrong, because this other guy over here says that you're not worth reading, I actually was like, so let me get this straight. Like, the apostles thought this was not legit, okay? You said that, and you said that, and you said that, and both of y'all disagree with the apostle, but y'all at least admit that that's what he thinks. And separately over here, you and y'all say the same thing. Y'all agree with what the, So I'm putting this together and I'm changing my opinion after several years of like stress testing, like I always say, looking at the negative reviews on Amazon. When I'm going to buy something on Amazon, I don't give a doggone rip about any positive reviews. If it's something I want, I don't care about what people have to say that's good about it. I want to see all the negative reviews. Because the negative reviews will let me know if this is really just a piece of trash, or if the people who was writing these bad reviews was just competition, haters, or if they just got somebody stepped on the shipping box or something random, but that doesn't affect the quality of the product. I'm not interested in people who have nothing but support. I'm interested in people who challenge a thing. So when I began to study all this stuff, I had spent 30-something years of my life listening to people in support of the thing. I was interested in the strongest and most solid challenges to a thing. And when you do that and you understand, okay, got it, learning about the first century is more about learning who and what was really happening, not what the Roman Sadducee-funded story will have you think about what was going on. So it's kind of like, I hear Muslims say, well, there's the Quran, well, let me back up. Every Christian I know would look at a Muslim and maybe nicely or maybe not. Like, well, there's no way that your book could be infallible. I don't believe the Quran is infallible. I'm a Christian. I believe the Bible's infallible. But yet every Muslim will say, well, people do memorize this book from start to finish. So there's no changing letters in it. It's memorized from start to finish. Separately, you can go and find books that are in the writings and phrases, I should say, that are in the Tanakh or in the Torah specifically, as it relates to the Pentateuch, that aren't in earlier versions, because all this stuff was handwritten. So to say, the handwriting has to go through such high scrutiny that there's no way that one possible jot or possible tittle could never pass away without someone noticing, is to be green behind the ears, because all you really need is for one season of a priesthood class to be in on the change. See what I'm saying? So you don't need everybody to be in on the trick. You just need one season, just one core group of people who are doing the handwriting copies to be like, no, copy it like this. It's between us. And that's once. At any point before the year 1440, when the printing press was invented, and you have corruptions. How I can prove that to you, I don't know. How any true researcher can actually go and look at the patterns of history and understand that the subjected, enslaved state of a bigger state does not get to just have everything pass through all hunky-dory and kosher. That's called street smarts. Book smarts is like, oh, no. These rabbis over here said it has to be perfect, so therefore it has to be. And because, some math can be worked out to make me convinced, and them too, that it's perfect, then it is. But you can make that same application to the pharmaceutical industry. Oh, I'm sure we saw all the Pfizer documents and the Moderna documents while everything was safe and effective. Oh, yeah, I'm sure we all saw it. What does that have anything to do with the actual efficacy of what clearly didn't stop nothing? Or the safety of what clearly introduced risk for the thing that you was kind of already safe from before you ever took it, if you took it. You see what I'm saying? It's like, I need for people to just learn how the world works. It's not about smarts and stupid. It's just about hey, mafias and hustlers be hustling. And big industries and big movements and big control mechanisms are built off control, not off truth and integrity and just everybody double checking everything. You see what I'm saying? Because every Christian would call foul on every Muslim, and likewise every Muslim would call foul on every Christian and say, well, there's no way your text is infallible. But yet all the rabbinically minded people, well, oh no, it is. And all the super duper Islamic devout folk will tell you, oh no, but it is, because people memorize it. So there's no possible way it could ever possibly be corrupted at any point. And it's like, both of y'all can't be right. So which one is it, right? That's all I'll say. I'm not gonna go through any of these comments. It's just too much. I honestly had a couple screenshotted because I hadn't replied to this over the last couple weeks. And I said, when I do my recap video, maybe I'll address some of the comments in that videos. And I'm more interested in looking at the new comments. of people who have real questions and not the comments of one guy who has my cell phone number, who knows how to call me if you really want to say something to me and not to my wife's page. I thought, the Torah talks about if you have an issue with a brother, you take it straight to him, right? Privately. Oh, but you want to put 50-something issues on her page. Right. Oh, but you're the one who believes is, what the Torah says is 100% true. So I'm not going to even address none of the hate. I'm not going to give that no more energy. I'm just going to say to that individual, if you really want to talk to me, you know my number, bruh. Come talk. I don't trust the Kabbalah. I'll tell you that. I understand that you're smart. You know a lot of what you're talking about in terms of like the studying of a thing. But I do have over a decade on you, and you're not the only smart person in the room. I'll tell you that much. That's my other thing. I don't I'm smart or whatever, but I really don't like tooting smarts horns, because I honestly think that the most smarts come from the people that you don't think are that smart. And I think that that's what Jesus and his whole apostle crew proved. The biggest foundational things were not from the most studied and the most elevated people at all. And in fact, he tends to use the lowly men of the world so that God's glory remains in his territory and not in the brain or the ego of the people who think that they know. But I just kind of I saw some of the comments at first, and again, I expected to get hate, but I was a bit surprised at the only hate we've ever gotten. Literally nobody's ever texted us about what we believe. We just get mumblings about what people hear about what they think we believe. Nobody ever will just text and just say, hey, let's talk. Because apparently that's too hard to do. But, if you want to challenge me on something, cool, but you don't have to do it like that, nor on my wife's page, and you can just talk to us. Plenty of people in this comment section have spoken with us. So we try to just let the haters do what they're going to do. I'm not here to convince anybody. I don't go on his channel instructing the people who watch his stuff on why he's wrong about X, Y, or Z. I don't even disagree with him on everything, and I don't think he disagrees with me on everything either. But on the things that we do disagree on, we just don't have to agree to disagree, because I have worked my math out. I don't owe you or anybody any receipts on that. I'm happy to introduce receipts for people who want to see them and who humbly come at me with them. But I don't owe anybody anything, especially when they come to me on some passive aggressive nonsense. And I don't trust the Kabbalah, so I don't need to be told that my views are limited because I'm not actually answering the question with the Jewish mystical application to understanding. Because I think that you're deceived for saying stuff like that. That's just my personal opinion. You can still be a nice, lovely person, but deception is everywhere, right? So I'm going to go back and finish reading. Oh, I think I have to pull it up over here. I'm going to go back and finish reading some of my... In fact, let me take these questions, and then I'm going to actually look at the comments, and then we'll wrap it up. So the first question on my question box is, when Yeshua says he is the gate. Okay, this is a good one. What up, Vive? Okay, so keep your questions. I am going to get to you, Callie Mod. I see your question. I'm just going to pull this up on this phone because my other phone is over there charging because it's about to die. Okay, I can't. Oh, wait, I can't. I have to go to my wife's other page just to see that she's actually on live so that I can see the questions. Okay, now we're cooking with grease. Okay, so this question also would love to know what you think he meant when Yeshua says he is the gate. Okay, this is a good question. I believe that when you look at, I won't belabor these questions. I'll try to get through them quickly. So I think what he's really saying is my behavior sets forth the walk, the path. Pictographic Hebrew is the ancient Hebrew. Paleographic Hebrew is the Middle Era Hebrew. What we're dealing with today is Babylonian Hebrew. They call it the Babylonian box letters, basically after their time in the Babylonian captivity. Their whole entire font got changed. This is kind of, I wasn't even trying to make this point until I just said it out loud, but this is how you know that the text just don't stay perfect. The whole language changed under one of their captivities. And y'all want to be like, oh, no, it was perfect. Okay, if I write something in English as thick as this book, and then in America gets captured by China, and 200, 300, 400 years later, this entire book has a whole new, like the way that you write English letters is entirely different. Are we really talking about like an infallibly copied book when I'm the one been getting my back whipped and beat by the hypothetical Chinese? I mean, you see what I'm saying? It's like, anyway. So the original Hebrew text is quite clear in its picture of what the purposes of the letters mean. Now, I mentioned that a little bit in our first episode, that Hebrew has all the definitions baked into the letters. And so the letters mean, you can come. The letters mean, I didn't think he was coming back. I was like, okay, I guess it just
I'm not sure if I was coming back either.
So the letters mean something quite significant, each one. The Dalet is the kind of pictograph of this door. The Dalet is the letter D, but it is kind of like a doorway or an entrance. So her question was, what do you think Jesus meant by, Yeshua says he's the gate. I think what he's really saying is, if I'm walking like this, and imagine that in the inner, like we see in 3D, right? But just hypothetically in 4D or in some sort of like ethereal spirit realm, if we're walking and through our walk exists this wake, like this giant trail that goes out behind us, like a boat wake, right? When a boat goes through the water, you see the wake, and that wake kind of splits and widens as time goes. Imagine that if Yeshua, and I'm trying to give it a visual so that it's clear. If Yeshua is walking, and his walk is creating this kind of draft of air, kind of like in NASCAR, in racing, when you try to get behind a car, or if you're driving on the highway and there's a 18-wheeler on the street and you get behind it, you feel that wind kind of jerk your car a little bit. That is what's happening in the ether / in the spirit world. And Jesus's walk, Yeshua's walk, is this consistent course. And that consistent course is a heading toward God's instructions. So by him saying he's that gate, what he's saying is that is like a portal in the sense of a spiritual gate is very much like that. It's this kind of energetic wake that already existed, because most gates and portals are, when you use them, it ain't the first time they were used. They're used for thousands of years in the same one. And that's what all the esoteric folk and all the hidden knowledge folk will say is unique about rituals that open portals, is that the portals are these gates that like people walk through. So I think what Jesus was saying is that my life is kind of like this portal, this gate.
He has the fruit.
And my fruit are the physical steps of the walking. And so when you follow me, you are walking through the gate. This is the gate that leads into life. I think it's maybe like a visual way to put it. So Christians have been left to mean, okay, well, you died as a blood sacrifice atonement, so therefore we just believe that, and that is our key into heaven. And I don't think Jesus ever meant it like that. I think Yeshua meant it like, listen, y'all, like what he told us to do in Matthew 19. Keep the commands. You want to enter heaven, keep the commandments. Oh, I already do that? Okay, great. Then walk with me. Come sell everything you have, come follow me. I'm oversimplifying, but on purpose, because I think that that's what he meant when he says he's the gate. Like, come through. Like, you about to see this gate literally open keys here, here, and here, all the way through this world in the kingdom of heaven, which is at hand. And by walking with me, you're essentially walking through the gate. So
yeah, all the parables, I think, are like really giving you the, more information about all of that, because it's always about the walk. It doesn't make sense if someone just dies for you. That's a great incentive to just use that and to your benefit. Whoever can use it for their benefit. But and Father is for knowing, so he knows the future, and he wouldn't make something that's going to be futile. How do you say futile? Yeah.
Futile, yeah.
So
hey, Bethany.
It's always about just what you're doing, how you're walking, and Yeshua, Jesus is the example of it.
For sure. Hey, Bethany, how are you? I'm just now catching up. In fact, my phone over there has all the juicy questions.
Should I go get it?
It might be charged up enough. Don't get it yet. Don't get it yet. Let it juice up a little more, and then we'll get it.
Okay.
So the next question. I'd love to hear more about which laws to keep versus which one may be false. Okay. So with regard to the laws and the Torah, this was Little House in the Ozarks. Great question. So the first thing you have to keep in mind is that when it comes to the Torah, the laws included, and people have done a pretty decent job of just like going through the whole Pentateuch and kind of writing out each law as they can kind of see it. And some of them are redundant. They mention it twice. And the common number you always hear is 613. There are 613 general laws. Of those 613, they were never all meant for everyone. Some of them are, and for the women, da, 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 da. Some of them are, and for the men, da, da, da. Some of them are, and for the high priest, da, 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 da. And the ones that are for the high priest were not something that the average guy or lady had to really worry about in general. So when it comes to which are relevant and which are bogus, what we found, this is what we did. We don't have like a giant list about, okay, these are bogus, these are relevant, these are bogus, these are relevant. For us, it was, well, Father, I've never honestly looked at the whole law. Like, let's just read it for ourselves. Like, I can honestly always say I've only ever took Paul's premise that it's too difficult and that it's a burden and a curse. I'm sorry I actually told you that you thought your instructions were a curse. I don't suppose they are, but let me actually look at these earnestly and honestly. And when I did, both of us did, early on our walk, we had a piece of paper, and every time we got to one, we're like, okay, that's something we got to do. That's for sure not done away with. That we got to do that one. It was like it fit on one piece of paper. Like it wasn't like that many things.
But then also when you were reading, what is it, Deuteronomy 28 or something? When you really look at what when the curse comes is when you're actually not doing the Father's instructions. That's when the curse comes upon you. Right.
But I'm just answering this person's question in terms of which laws are which. So
yeah.
But it's a slightly hard question to ask or answer because it's not like law number 5 is good, law number 17 is bad, law number 30, it's not as black and white like that. There were so many that didn't apply to everybody to begin with. Then there are the ones that, if you ask me, were spurious in terms of all the sacrificial model. But even if we're hypothetically going with the fact that they're not spurious for a second, there's no temple, right? There's no procedure for actual animal sacrifice. So those laws don't apply. Sabbath, applicable. The Moedim, the feasts. Passover, the feast of unleavened bread.
You shall have
the feast of first fruits of the wave sheaf. Shavuot or Pentecost. Yom Teruah, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, and Sukkot. These are things that I think are worth keeping and are a good indicator for you to keep and are a good practice for you to keep. Number 1, Jesus actually did it. Number 2, the feasts and all the rules were never given to the Jews. Number 1, they were given before the Jew was even a word. It was all the different tribes. Sorry, I'm like open here. All the tribes of Israel. And God said, these are my feasts, my Moedim, my festivals, my appointed times, right? So it was never
you
a
remember
Jewish...
him. Those are the traditions that you want to keep.
Correct.
To remember him and what he did.
Right. And when you read them, they all always have to do with teach this to your children. Read your children this. Remind them of how I delivered them during the Exodus. And remind them of the things that they would all forget. Don't have to open it because I don't want to read it.
I'm not going to have you read anything yet.
Okay.
I just wanted to point something out, but you go ahead.
All the Moedim, the festivals, the appointed times, these were all given by God saying, my festivals, my laws, these are my parties. These are dinner parties that I'm having. I'm hosting. And, ask me if you're going to get struck dead if you don't go. Probably not, right? It's not like, oh, I'm going to kill you if you don't show up to my party. But he does indicate multiple times, my children are the ones who heed my voice. I know my children. I know my own by those who keep my Sabbath. Those who keep Sabbath are how I know who's mine.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So he gives us the invitation, not the commandment is Jesus saying like, yeah, do this, right? God is saying, this is my instructions for my children. And don't work on this. Don't buy or sell, right? But like, you run out of gas in the middle of the street on a Saturday afternoon, I'm pretty sure it's okay if you hand the guy $5 so he can give you you see what I'm saying? It's not about this dogmatic, hyper Pharisaical application, if you will, of legalistic yay or nay, this or that. It's about learning the spirit of the whole point of them and honoring that. And what that's left us with is a series of very easy things to follow when it comes to things we observe in terms of the things that we eat and don't eat, the things that we celebrate and don't celebrate, and the days like Sabbath, for example, that we keep. And that's like, again, I wish I had that I think I have it actually on that bookcase or something.
I know where it is.
It's not worth fine. It's not that important. It was just a one sheet of printer paper on one side was everything that we had wrote. And we remember being like,
yeah, go ahead.
I remember being like, how on earth did we think this was hard? Like, who says this is a burden again?
Right. I mean, it was more so like...
What? I mean, I'm pretty sure...
Very... Things that make sense, like don't, what was it? Like food that's gone bad or whatever.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Don't touch this and don't...
There was a lot of stuff in the Torah like, don't touch a dead carcass. If you do, wash your hands. You're considered unclean until later that evening, until sunset, basically. Or like... don't charge interest to your neighbor. Or like if you lend to somebody, lend without interest. And
right.
if you borrow money from somebody, pay them back. And if you lend money to somebody and they haven't paid you back after 7 years, forgive the debt. It's like they struggling. Just let them have the money. You ain't needed it for 7 years. You probably don't need it.
And that's another thing when it comes to the tax or interest. Who's putting interest? I mean, it just helps you to also understand the world right now. If they say that they are, in God we trust, and then yet you're putting interest on everything to your people, that they're not really following the Father.
Exactly.
Or, yeah.
Okay, so Little House on the Ozarks asked about... So we're going to have a whole separate night where we talk about circumcision. It's one of those, like, one thing at a time for folk type conversations.
Yeah. I mean, it really breaks down to, I think, or boils down to what, like, consuming life leads to life, consuming death leads to death in the spiritual sense, in the physical sense. Mm-hmm. Just like that. And it's, if you keep that in mind, that commandment that says, you shall have no other gods. Me, why? It's not because I'm the greatest. I'm like, the best there is. Therefore, you just have to have me as your God. It's not that. It's that other gods, lowercase g, are not gonna do what's best for you. So don't follow them. So it's very. I forgot what I was saying.
I forgot what you're saying too, and I don't know what it has anything to do with this person's question.
No, but yeah.
The question is, I'd love to hear about, so she clarified, like which ones are not given by God. So this is what I would say to you.
Oh, what leads to life, consuming life leads to life, and consuming death leads to death.
All right.
That's where the point was.
This is the easiest way to answer your question, Little House on the Ozarks. And what we'll do is we'll have a DM. We can DM us. I know you've been talking with Jen. We can follow this question up indirectly because it's kind of a nuanced answer. But the truth is, or let me say this. What we did is we started praying and soaking up, Father, please teach us your spirit. Like, please give us like the same feeling you feel about a thing in the Bible or out of the Bible. We want to have your heart as it relates to the church. We want to feel the way you feel as it relates to the Torah. We want to feel the way you feel as it relates to sacrifice. We want to feel the way you feel as it relates to circumcision. We want to feel the way you feel as it relates to all of these things.
Make it make sense.
Make it make sense and help us resonate and like settle at peace in whatever you would instruct us, even if it's not like popular, so to speak. And that was our prayer for, I mean, it's still our prayer, but especially at the beginning. And the reason I would say just make that prayer a part of your regimen moving forward is that it's kind of like a hard question to say, well, this one was given by God and this one wasn't, because I'm still working through how to like clink, like frame out what it is I'm looking at 4,000 years removed
Right.
from the actual giving of the Torah.
Things that are applicable.
Well, it's not even about applicability. It's that I was rereading this whole kind of research journey for us, especially as it relates to the sacrificial system, popped off for us when I'm rereading the Bible, because I got these new Bibles. I'm really excited. And then I get the Genesis and we read Enoch, Jasher, Jubilees, and get the Exodus. And then I get to Leviticus and I'm like, but like, hold on now. Like, this is so much beauty in this tabernacle, but like now you want to bloody it all up. Like,
Make it make sense.
Make it make sense. You see what I'm saying? And it was like us feeling like, I'm sure there's a way. And when I first read it, I was like, God, I don't understand why or how, because of how small the place is and how many animals it's supposed to be. But it says it right here in your word, so I'm willing to believe that it is something you asked. I don't understand logistically how that makes sense. And through time and over several months and then research and then this video and then this book and then this guy and then this email thread back and forth, then we hit the place where we're like, got it. The Father deals with like water and life. Satan deals with like blood and death. And these themes start to like sift to the top over time. So,
but also knowing, the ways of the world and how the enemy likes to do what they like to do.
Right. So you have to so your point about the Egyptian circumcision model, like how has it ever been exclusive to Israel if it was a part of the Egyptian culture too? How does it set children apart in the face of Yahweh as it relates to Abraham's covenant if Pharaoh and them was doing the same thing?
One thing that I think is helpful too. Yeah.
Plus,
what he said.
like, well, I'm gonna be direct, but we're gonna talk about circumcision later. We have 180. We have changed our mind on that. People consider that. I mean, people think we're heretics or whatever for it, but we now have a son, and that son has every piece of skin he was born with, and that decision was not made lightly. It was not made haphazardly. Had our daughter been a boy, it would have been the opposite story, because our mind was made up the opposite way 4 years ago when she was born.
We were praying for a girl because we weren't sure. We wanted to do what the Father.
We wanted to do what the Father wanted us to do. And I remember we were talking to a friend, and we didn't find out if it was a girl or a boy until with both of our children until they were born. So we honestly didn't know. And we had friends that were like, "You're gonna circumcise, right?" And we were like, "Well, yeah, right, of course." And then we had other friends that was like, "You're not gonna circumcise, right?" And we were like, I mean, like, why not? I mean, we want to, and we're thinking of it. Like, well, please don't do that. Well, hold on now, but like, why? But isn't it cleaner? Didn't God say? Right. So we're working through all this stuff on our own at the time. Years later, we hit a place where we're like, got it. And for me, my whole thing was always like, Father, circumcision of the heart makes all the sense in the world. But if you're the perfect designer, I don't understand how the removal of a piece of flesh that you designed to be there makes sense in just a sense category. But even if we're talking a covenant, like, how does that work?
Yeah.
Plus,
and then salvation, like
when
you come to the gates, wait, let me take a look.
Like,
you cut that off. That's great.
You see what I'm saying?
You gotta wear the tassels. You gotta do this. You gotta do this.
Or in the sense that every solid Christian, Jewish person, Torah observant, whatever, anybody on the like right half of God and Christ, they will all say that if you come to Christianity later in life, or you're born into some other culture, right, and your parents didn't cut whatever that Abraham would have cut, that you can still come into God's good graces. You can still be a follower of God. You can still be a follower of Jesus. You still see heaven. It's not a prerequisite for entering heaven. Everybody will tell you that. Conversely, if you happen to have got the snip early in life, and you live a life of complete and total licentiousness and disobedience, you do not get an automatic pass into heaven because you have no foreskin, right? So I'm not here, and neither is Jennifer, to tell anybody what to do or think. We're simply communicating what we think and what we have learned. And I look at the patterns after 9 years of looking at it, stepping back, and I go, this is a bloodlust priesthood, this like magic priesthood of mystical origins or whatever. is obsessed with blood. It's always about cutting blood.
Life is in the blood.
And, Torah observant people would be like, oh, well, isn't it brilliant that God told you to wait till the 8th day in order to cut the baby, because that's when the vitamin K builds up. That's evidence of God actually knowing what the heck's going on. And I look at that as kind of baby thinking, because if we really want to ask if Lucifer's trying to indoctrinate people into a sex cult or a blood covenant in the wrong direction, it's not going to be a good look if every baby boy dies day one anyway. So Lucifer telling you to wait 8 days is just as smart. You see what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying it's just as smart. I'm saying the injunction of waiting 8 days is a matter of function, not of like righteous origin. Because if I'm the devil trying to recruit people in my fold or God trying to recruit people in my fold, I'm going to tell you to wait 8 days. Ain't nobody going to be in any covenant if every baby ends up dying on the day that they are first born, because they're circumcised then because they have not enough vitamin K, which is the whole premise of the American pharmaceutical system, pumping your baby full of vitamin K, especially if they're a boy, right when they're born, for this very reason. So circumcision is another one of those tricky, prickly ones, but I looked at it, and in the case of our son, we decided not to circumcise, which would be the first in the generations of our family to not have that treatment done. And I was a bit, I won't say scared to talk about it. It's mostly just like I don't feel like defending my son's penis to you. Not you who asked the question, but just you, the hypothetical you. But on the other hand, I now do understand, like, it is a sensitive subject. Not a ton of people talk about this openly. Most people who do it in America do it under cosmetic or hygiene reasons. Very few Christians do it because God said so. That's more of a Jewish thing or a Islamic thing. But when you factor in the fact that all Christians think that God is coming for the salvation of the world, but yet most of the world is not actually circumcised, like, it doesn't, like, these things don't fit. Plus, if we're really talking about the great designer, and the whole point of a foreskin is to protect something super sensitive from overstimulation, then I really am scratching my head as to how a covenant toward righteousness is executed by making the sensitive thing more susceptible to stimulation, making it theoretic. I mean, I know they say, oh, we do this to stop boys from masturbating, but that's not a thing. That doesn't stop anybody from doing anything. There's complications that arise. I know more than one individual, Torah observant, who has had complications with their children where they've almost, I won't say lost, they haven't almost lost their kid, where their kid had medical extenuating circumstances, follow-up surgeries, follow-up procedures, follow-up treatments that were required specifically because of circumcision going wrong. And I look at that and I go, 4,000 years later, with all the modern medicine, and we still knowing boys that's losing their life. I mean, I just saw a statistic the other day that said more boys die from circumcision-related complications than, it was like strangulation. It was like two other popular, I'd have to go pull up the headline, the article to see. But I was sitting there going, this is a medical challenge for people in the most heavily medicated country and time on earth. Are we really out here thinking that God asked this for a covenant that every adult Christian male would tell you isn't required? Like if I happen to grow up atheist or agnostic, or Serbian or European and wasn't circumcised, and later came into the knowledge of belief in God, my penis state doesn't actually define my salvation state. You see what I'm saying? But like when it comes to newborn boys, like people like literally don't want to hear you unless you are towing the party line. Only nobody wants to talk about all the medical and psychological and like interpersonal, like all the other things that can happen. It's just a conversation. People either they made their mind up, they don't want to hear it. They either take one extreme or the other. It's entirely barbaric. It's evil. Or, this is God, clearly what he wanted. This is something that just should be. It's cleaner, it's better, it's da-da-da-da. But I'm sitting there going, God hasn't seemed to design any animal on earth with regard to any appendage that's better when it's removed. That doesn't follow the model of a designer. That doesn't indicate a perfect design.
And
Plus,
and then it said you created in my image too.
right. But I'm assuming that image has a foot. Like, I don't know. It's hard to think about guys.
But I mean,
it's just a bit weird. You know what I mean? But I don't want to belabor this
you're
point.
one part of it. Wait, that doesn't. Wait, never mind.
This could go downhill real fast. So I wasn't necessarily going to go into it that much tonight, just because I'm like, we got to set this up.
You said I'm going to just do this for an hour.
Yeah, I know. Right?
That's what he
2.5 hours later. So
it's never an hour.
Does God want this? Rocky's mom says she worked in a pediatric clinic that did circumcisions, and there were definitely complications sometimes. Exactly.
Right.
They're like I said, I've known more than one child in the last year or two that's dealt with complications. And their parents are great people. Like, it's no shade on the parent. Everybody's doing what they think is right? I'm not even here to hate on the heart behind why you do it. I just think that there has to be a point at which that adult thinking, rationally, Holy Spirit-led men and women hit a place where we learn to decide and decipher between traditions of men and things that God asked. Mm-hmm. And if I was just to cherry pick circumcision out of thin air, you might can make the case that Chris has lost his marbles. But that decision comes after we've already crossed the whole sacrificial decision, after we've gotten through the whole Paul discussion, after we've gotten through the whole infallibility discussion. And then when I'm really starting to pay attention to the whole priest versus prophet, priesthood class, keeping in mind that half those circumcisions are found in the priestly document of the documentary hypothesis, you find that, like, okay, got it. Like, these modern rabbis be like cutting it and sucking the blood out with their teeth, and that's like a whole thing. There's like a ceremonial, a baris, where people sit there and watch the circumcision happening. I'm not knocking people for their cultural things.
That's very strange to me.
But that's a bit strange. Like, you're gonna cut my baby's penis up, and I want to like sell you viewing tickets to like watch the process, right?
Right, and it can be taken advantage of. Those are the type of things that can be taken advantage of.
Right. So again, the point isn't to knock people who have circumcised who haven't. I'm not here to tell y'all did anything y'all shouldn't have done. All right, that's not what we're here to do. What we're here to say is, like Stephanie was mentioning, Father, this is challenging me. Like, that was my prayer back before we even had our daughter 4 years ago. I fully understand the concept of circumcision of the heart. That makes complete sense to me. Circumcision of the foreskin does not make complete sense to me. Can you help explain that to me? And over time and it wasn't a right away answer. Like, it did not come right away. It was like 2-3 years later, we were like, got it. This blood-obsessed priesthood class installed itself, and everything we're seeing about blood, anything blood, obsession-related is kind of usually their thing. Like, not, I mean, like...
And if a lot of people are doing it, then it should also be questionable.
Right, and if
the road is going to be narrow and few that find it.
And if a lot of people are doing it, and 99% of that lot of people have nothing to do with making a covenant promise between God and Abraham at all. It's about hygiene and looks for 99% of people, because y'all watch too much porn, so all y'all think is looks look like what the dudes in the porn look like. And hygiene, if you dirty, you dirty. I know plenty of dirty Negroes who's dirty. I know plenty of ladies. I won't say I know plenty of ladies. That's not true. I've heard tales of these ladies who ain't as clean as they want to think they is.
Yeah, because you should share how...
Share what?
share how you actually were a virgin.
Oh, yeah.
He was a virgin
yeah, okay.
up until marriage. That is an honorable thing, and women need to hear about that.
I guess, but that's not my point. The point.
No, but I think that's a beautiful thing.
Sure. That's fine.
Are you okay with me?
I am, but it's not. It's unrelated
now?
to the point. It's like completely tangential, not related to the point. I mean,
it's sort of related to the point. Never mind. Honorable things. No, because you were saying I know plenty of. No, wait, I don't. Yeah.
Well, I was just trying to be like I was gonna say I know plenty of women who think they fresh and who ain't, but then I was thinking actually no, I don't. I've just
And
heard.
you better not.
Right? So I was trying to backpedal myself and sticking my foot in my mouth, and then you ain't hopped on a whole new topic.
And then I came in like this.
Came in like a wrecking ball, like a doggone.
But an honorable thing. Like, I never thought that could be possible. And I wanted to find someone that I could, trust, because I don't know, if you're a woman, you know how it is in the dating world. You never know if a man likes you or not, and they always want to get in your pants and stuff.
Ooh, I like this question. I'm glad I saw this. This is a good one.
And also now I'm like, hopefully no children heard this. But
not
anyway,
live.
Anyway. It's just.
Thank you, Nina. It is definitely rare. It was definitely challenging at times, but it was something I was committed to. And thankfully, the ex-girlfriends that I had were committed to that too. So that's nice. But yeah, so this question. Aileen, hashtag team V.
Wait.
That's cool. That's awesome. Like, I actually know other people than myself. And every time I meet somebody, we're all like, oh, okay, cool. Like, okay, that's actually great. Not everybody's a hoe. Not everybody.
But I think it just shows the character of the person, especially men these days. You just don't know who you can trust. And if he was willing to wait,
they strap the baby down.
That is just, it helps you to trust. And I had no trust in men for like my entire life until I started, following the Father, or like looking to have a relationship with God, and then on top of that, meeting this amazing man over here. And so
all of that was button-tailing our circumcision tangent. But now we're going to move on to a couple other questions. So if you have any final ones, definitely put them in the question box or re-comment them, because I only started pulling up the comments on this phone not that long ago, so I can't scroll too far up. Yeah. So Heather Ailey. Oh man, I always try Heather A. Lippy. Heather all Ippy. Heather Ollie. PPP. Right here. I can't. What?
I'm just looking.
You gonna say it out loud? Or just gonna let all this?
Heath or Lippy.
Oh no, it's Heather.
Heath or Lippy.
Heather Allappy. Heather Allappy. We'll go with that. Heather Allappy. Heathrow a Lippy. Is tithing biblical? Giving to the poor / needy / etc. 100% is, but unsure of tithing at this point. Many pastors push this. Oh man, what a good question.
That's supposed to be.
So when you talk about the Torah is nailed to a cross, how many churches you done been in talking about how the law is done away with? Tithing is in the law. Tithing is a concept only you will only ever find in the law, unless you're talking about Malachi or somebody correcting all the like greedy priests at the time for their exploitation of the tithe. But tithing is biblical in the sense that it is foundationally valid. It's just that the modern expression of it is not biblical at all, if you ask me. Jesus himself says multiple times, freely you've received, freely you give. Shake the dust off your feet if you go to a place and you preach and they don't want to hear it. But if you preach, don't charge no money for it. You can work a job if you want to like volunteer or like work a trade not on your preaching days. You could do that. People can actually donate and bless you if they feel so inclined. But nobody owes you anything for sharing the gospel. That was Jesus' words. Okay. In fact, that was the structure of the entire rabbinical system, kind of. Well, let me back up. Not the structure of the rabbinical system by Jesus' day. That was the original model was set up to not be exploited. It just later got shifted and exploitable over time. So the tithe was always food-based, number one. So in the Torah, the Levitical priests were given an inheritance that was unlike the rest of their brothers. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, and Benjamin. All of those kids and their offspring were given regions of places to live, with the exception of Levi, who was kind of allowed to stay with some of his brothers and cousins, but their special inheritance was a bigger portion of the time with the Most High, so that Levi
Taking
kind
care
of
of heaven.
presided over the spiritual affairs of his brothers. And in exchange for the fact that Levi had no land to grow his own food on, Levi's brothers would bring a tenth of their first fruits, of their actual crops, to feed Levi and his kids. And this is where the concept of tithe comes from. And then in a more righteous sense, let me not say righteous, and in a more institutionalized sense later, prior to New Testament and Jesus and all that, but after the original Levi, the Levitical priests they had a rotation system set up. So they received money in from the Yahweh, food or funds or gold or whatever, and that food was to be redistributed in the community. And then on every, I think, second or third week, the Levitical priests split it amongst all the priesthood. But for the greater bulk of the tithe, it was always for the orphans and the widows and the Yahad in general, food and resources. Okay. So thousands of years removed from that, where people don't bring food to church, they literally bring checkbooks or swipe square cards or like direct deposit form slips. And pastors will tell you, and keeping in mind, at the time, it was for the temple system to pay for the people that were in it, not for the building, not for the electricity, not for the parking lot, not for the missions trips that the temple wanted to take, for the ecosystem of the community, the church, and the temple, and the parishioners that went to that temple. So you ask me if that applies in the context of a not temple, where most of the pastors that you know is richer than most of the people in that church, and where the pastor's point, unlike the Levitical priest point, was not to the Levitical priest point was not to just think of a sermon and on Sunday holla at your boy for a couple hours with a good word. It was to oversee the spiritual well-being of your entire family, literal family, right? So now you can see why God carved out a whole 10% of all the food for their sustenance. How that relates to money in a pastor's pocket is a whole remix, especially when they're the same people that say, oh, the law is done away with, but we're just going to cherry pick this one thing from the law.
You can just
called the tithe. We're just going
anything that can be taken advantage of.
We're going to borrow that.
That should be.
We're going to borrow that. But that's it. The rest of the law is nailed to the cross, but we're going to borrow the tithe. So it's a whole switcheroo. It's different. You know, the tithing thing, like my whole thing, when I first learned this, the next thing, because I tithed my whole entire life, right? What I started doing pretty much right away is taking every red cent that I would ever give to a church and just going straight into a parking lot or a bridge underpass or somewhere where I saw somebody who needed something and physically just giving them money or buying them something direct. And I honestly think Jesus has said it so many times. James said it, John said it. The only religion I find worthy is taking care of orphans and widows, giving to the needy and the poor, like you said. Now, of course, you agree that is 100% biblical. But Jesus, the injunction about spreading the good news, which is what pastors are doing, is supposed to be free. They just cherry picking one thing from the Torah that they want to tell you don't need to apply to their pockets, get in line, because that's what their seminary education system teaches them to do. So half the time, it ain't even malicious. It's just the way the industry works. The other half the time, they grifting. I know too many things about too many famous pastors today. I'm not even going to name names because we don't need to stoop that low, now do we? I just know how they make this money. And they can pull a cool million in a week, and it's not from the tithe. They don't do it from fleecing their own flock. They do it by charging a ridiculous speaking fee and going on tours to speak at other churches and fleecing the flock of the neighboring church to pay the speaking fee of this other church. And that is the game that has been kind of the hustle around the way. So,
and because it's nonprofit, it can be any amount.
Any amount.
Right? And it's something that you can write off later too.
Mm-hmm.
So
and then so for example,
money laundering.
the I'm trying not to name names. I don't want to get the dude in trouble, but I'm good friends with the chief of security of one of what might be, we'll say top 5, just to not point the finger too close, of the top 5 pastors presently in existence today. And we were having dinner maybe 2 or 3, maybe this is like 4 or 5 months ago now. And he was like, oh, yeah, you know what the real hustle is. And we were like, what? And we were all just talking about all our stories and insider stories. He's like, yeah, the hustle is going to speak at the guest speaking appearances, because they'll take a $50,000 or something modest salary from their own church.
Modest.
He'll write a book, but ask me if you can go into this one room in the basement of the giant church that exists with this author, or this pastor's an author, and you'll find thousands of copies of his book that he bought himself and his investors bought so that it becomes a New York Times bestseller. And they just give those copies out for free or for swag or in the bookstore and things like that. So the book sales ain't even really making him the money. It's the speaking fees. And then he'll get guest church A, guest church B, guest church C to pay a $200,000 speaking fee. And the tithes and offerings of the special night of the guest speaker will raise that money to pay for the other church's pastor's guy to come speak at this church. You see what I'm saying? Pastor A, church A, Pastor B, church B. Pastor A goes and is a guest speaker at church B. And Pastor B encourages his entire flock to bring in a love offering for Pastor A. And Pastor A is like, oh, God's doing a great work at your church. I can just see what God's doing. I'm just so happy to be a part of what God's got going on here. Because they're getting that $200,000 speaking fee. Pastor B will next week be at Pastor A's church doing the same thing. But it's all clean. It's all, nobody's on the books for anybody else. Any difference in the amount that Pastor A charges for the speaking fee that church B does not raise in the love offering, the administration will just, basically meet you halfway, cover the differences, match the amount. And then Pastor A goes and just gets all that same money back from church A. Pastor B goes to church A and does the same thing. And then you get 6 or 7 of them pastors in a circuit, and they just buying boats, buying yachts, buying Bugattis, buying lots, buying houses, buying cars, buying. You see, that's how they do it. So that's the long and short of it.
Everything is.
Tithes is being exploited, y'all. They done snatched one little premise from that's the only thing churches will do is like still Torah observant, is they'll take that tithe. But it's out of place because Jesus himself was like, listen, this good news is free. Don't charge you for this. If you need money, go work your job. Okay, but freely have you received, freely you give. Pastors are being all kinds of foul with it. And by and large, they're mostly just instructing their flock on how to follow a Pauline methodology on life and salvation and Christianity in general. And that's the whole point of what seminaries do, is they instruct and stamp out Pauline theological robot automatons that only know how to do that one thing because it's all they were ever taught, because they were only ever taught the story one way. And yes, the math checks out, so they never bother reevaluating the math because it already checks out.
And it benefits them.
And it benefits them. And it's like, if I got a boat and a couple houses, I'm about to make another $200,000. Why do I care to not keep doing what I'm doing? Bless me. Bless me. The Lord's working on me. Oh, yes, he is. He definitely working on me on that Bugatti. He going to keep me. He going to make sure I don't get no speeding tickets on that Bugatti. It goes so fast. So, yeah, more or less. Okay. So we have one more question in the question box.
I'm going to have to watch this back because I didn't hear what you were talking about.
Okay, this is a good one. He made me ask this question. I was taught that when Adam and Eve fell, God sacrificed an animal to cover them. Thoughts? So somebody asked us that.
I'm sorry for I did this. You saw it on my face.
Oh.
Sorry.
Somebody asked us, it was either he made me or somebody different when we posted that video. And I remember saying, I'm going to go back and read that account. And it says, and God saw Adam, said, Adam, who told you were naked? And it says, and he fashioned coats of skin to cover them.
Right.
So the first thing that I said when I was rereading this, because I was asked this question maybe a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, I do remember that. Let me go back and look at it to refresh my memory. And so I go back and read, and I go, well, okay, it says he made coats of skin. it's God. He literally could have just, and skin could have appeared, right? Number one. It doesn't actually say he slaughtered X, Y, and Z and then skinned them and then made coats of skin. We assume that. And I was taught the same thing he made me. So this is not me saying that you're making anything up, because I was taught literally the exact same thing. But number one, it doesn't say that he slaughtered anything. Number two, the whole Genesis thing, I don't want to get too much into the every night view of Adam and the whole Genesis thing. I know that's what you're thinking, because it's already, I'm trying to wrap this up. It's too much.
Are you
sure? Yes, I'm sure. She's laughing at me because I know what she's thinking. Oh, I want to tell him. Like, you're already picking up the Nazarene Act. I'm trying to work on my wife at being like I'm trying to purposeful and like contained when it comes to these things. Like, you don't got to tell everybody everything you want them to know.
I'm trying. I'm holding in that lioness.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you holding in.
Because I want to share.
Yeah, I know. But
all the good things.
Okay. I remember when I first got this. Here it is. And I'm going to put this on the screen for the YouTube, but this is, hopefully you can see how this translates. And when I was first reading, I was really thankful that we got these Bibles when we did, because it really helped clarify a whole lot. Let's see if we can. What's the easiest way? It's all backwards. I forgot. So if you can see this chart right here, this line in the chart, it says the flood. You can't really see it because it's kind of tiny, but it says the flood. And right over here is Adam. And I think it goes all the way down to Jacob, right? Jacob way down here and Adam way up here. And it shows you how Adam basically lived to be 930 years old. Shem was 912 years old. Enosh was 905. Jared was 895 rather. Enoch was only 365 because he was the one that God snatched up before he died. Methuselah, who lived the longest, was 969 years old, and it has his dying essentially right before the flood. And it does list the Genesis references of it when all these people were born and dies, so that they know how the calculations are made. But this is the thing that reason I brought this up. This is at 1650. You see the numbers there? The flood is in between. It says 0, 100 years, 200 years, 300, 400. It goes all the way to 1600 and then has the flood. So when you read in the book of in the book of Genesis, right? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness on the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters and said, let there be light. And there was light. Right? Genesis 1. Genesis 2, and God made man and woman, and da-da-da-da. Genesis 3, Cain and Abel story. Between 3 and 4, right? By the time you get to Genesis 6, and the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and giants were born in those days. The Nephilim, the men of renown, and there was much bloodshed on those days in the earth and after, right? Then you turn one page or a couple pages to Genesis 7, and Noah's already built the ark and he's in the ark, right? Like the flood waters start coming in Genesis 7. Now that's 1650 and some change years after the creation. So we have Genesis chapters 1, 2, and 3 kind of basically being about the beginning. Genesis chapter 7 being about 1650 years in. And so we're left to really take 1649 years and make them make sense in 2 or 3 chapters of time, where we're told in the book of Jubilees, this book right here, and I think maybe even the book of Enoch, that the fallen angels fell in the days of Jared. You'll see in that book, Jared, that's Enoch's dad, right? So in the days of Jared is when the Genesis chapter 6 stuff happened. The Son of God fell and came to the daughters of men, and giants were born in those days. That's when they started teaching all these weapons of war. That's when they started teaching mankind to eat dead flesh. Mankind ate fruits and nuts, just like it said in Genesis chapter 2, since the beginning. But in the days of Jared, which was Enoch's dad, we're talking so we're basically saying that between Genesis 1 and Genesis 6, kinda, was all of the 1,000 years of I can't say 1,000. It was a long period of time where goodness proliferated up until a point where debauchery started proliferating, so much so that the flood was sent. Okay? But that is between Genesis chapter 6 and 7, some arbitrarily 500 to 1,000 years of time between that. You see what I mean? Meaning, what God specifically did in Genesis as a historical matter relating to how he covered Adam and Eve's sin is something that I've just had to understand, like, okay, we're given basically the book of Genesis is like a big Cliff Notes stamp. It's like receiving a stamp in the mail, like a postcard in the mail with like a picture on it. And like, that's the whole story, right? It's like such a truncated, so much went on so long ago. Here it is to you in a few pages. You know, it's just like, it's a postcard. You know what I mean? And so with regard to like, because this is the way my mind works. Okay, Adam and Eve are butt naked, right? They sin. They're still butt naked. As far as we know, there's nobody else to see them. Now they know they're naked, but who are the clothes for? Like, what's the point of God having to kill something like we were told in order to make coats of skin for Adam and Eve to hide from their own shame and nakedness? You see what I'm saying? It's like
by themselves.
I don't mean to sit here and go, let's read the Bible and like apply our logic to every twist and turn and make it only make sense if it makes sense to us. I don't actually do that. I simply go, well, in the case of Genesis, we're given a whole entire allegory in terms of like the garden and the sin and the whole thing. It was just all an event that took a lot longer than what we're led to believe. And we're told God in Genesis chapter 1 made Adam and Eve, and then in Genesis chapter 2, God made Adam and saw that he was alone and he shouldn't be without a helper. So he was put into a sleep and Eve was fashioned. But it's like, but I thought you made him at the same time. You just said that last chapter. So there's all that going on. And then there's the like, oh, got it. But like, according to the record of a lot of these people, it makes a whole lot more sense that Cain and Abel's sacrifice, their offerings were switched. Cain, Jesus says, like your father, don't be like Cain, who was of his father, the devil, who was a murderer from the beginning. But apparently Abel and Adam murdered an animal first, unless the story just gets inverted. And we're literally just looking at a tale of inversion where God was actually pleased with first fruits. Like he actually asked for it. Remember, God asked for first fruits. That's a whole festival called the Festival of First Fruits. So we're told Cain brought his first fruits and Abel brought a animal offering, and God loved Abel's so much and hated Cain so much that Cain got jealous. But like, first of all, what kind of father does that, right? Mm-hmm. Where it's like, I have two kids and one of my kids brings me something and the other one doesn't. And I like literally hate the gift that the second kid brought me. I didn't instruct them that they had to bring me no animal.
Unless it was something diabolical, yeah.
Well, yeah, but
I mean, in that case.
I know. But my point is, unless God said, bring me this Cain and Abel, and one was disobedient, there's no groundwork for God to be mad at a sacrifice, just especially in the inverted way that I believe that the story is told, when it's all the reason in the world for him to be mad if you kill something. Like if Adam and Abel offer the fruit of the land, and Cain, who apparently was like his father, the devil, a murderer from the beginning, actually went and murdered something. Now that makes sense. Like that makes sense for God to be mad. But like literally the rest of the story given to us in this, like, well, God just did it. God wanted the death of a brand new thing. Okay, so Adam was saying thank you. He was teaching his sons how to say thank you. And to say thank you, this innocent animal over here has to die, but there's no Torah, right? Torah was for thousands of years later. Supposedly. All right. As according to the way we're told, there's no Torah, so there's no guideline for what to sacrifice and what not to. But God's pissed that apparently Cain's sacrifice wasn't worthy. Only what parent actually doesn't think that their child's gift is worthy, even if it's like a macaroni necklace, right? And it's like not even better than the older kid's gift. But it's a gift, right, from your own kid, so you're not going to just be like, man.
Right. Since they were saying that about him bringing first fruit, and he wasn't happy.
Or he wasn't pleased with the gift, right?
Give
see
it
what I'm
with
saying?
your heart.
So all that to say is, I think that we're dealing with this blood cult that has been obsessed with this idea that God like literally needs blood. He needs it. He must have it. And this bloodlust
Or
cult
something
is
has
like
to die because you
Right.
will die if you sin.
right. And the bloodlust cult is really what's giving us this. Oh wait, God would have rather had 2 dead animals to say thank you instead of just their contrite heart saying thank you, or some fruits saying thank you. You see what I'm saying? So in that regard, I don't know about God killing the animal to make a skin for Adam and Eve, because I look at that and go, well, number one, it doesn't say he killed the animal. It just says he made a coat of skin. And number two, like, who were they hiding from? There was nobody else on earth at the time, right? So why would he even need to make a coat of skin? As far as God was concerned, they weren't any more naked than they already was. So
Yeah.
I look at that. I also look at, like, there's just a lot, right? So that's essentially the quickest way I can answer that question.
Can I just add something real quick here?
Mm-hmm.
I think it was last time when I read a little bit out of the book of Sirach, which is still in the Catholic Bible, but it was pulled out of ours. And if you go to chapter 35, it says, "He who guards the law brings offerings enough. He who guards the commands offers a peace offering. He who repays a good deed offers fine flour, and he who gives in kindness offers praise. To depart from wickedness is pleasing to Yahweh. To depart from wickedness is pleasing to Yahweh, and to forsake unrighteousness is an atonement. You shall not appear empty-handed before Yahweh, for all these are because of the command. The offering of the righteous makes the altar fat, and its sweet savor is before the Most High. The offering of a righteous man is acceptable, and the remembrance of it shall never be forgotten."
Right. It's just more verses that say, listen, righteousness, beauty, obedience, maybe some spices here and there that actually smell good when you burn them. That's all a pleasing aroma to God.
Or it's a pleasing aroma.
Or a pleasing aroma
Not
in general.
necessarily something that you have to do to him, but
Oh, I'm just saying, it's just like
it's something that actually smells good.
there was a time at which I could smell like bacon being cooked and being like, oh man, breakfast, I love it. Now, if I smell bacon, I like almost vomit. No, I'm not, I could be around it. It's not that bad, but I smell it and I'm like, I can't get out of my mind that it's like a burning thing on the,
I get that.
It's like different. I never would have thought I'd ever be here, but we've been vegetarian for 5 years and we kind of went through the arc. There was a season where we were like, oh man, it smells so good. I miss it. One day, maybe not. We'll see. And now I smell it. I'm like, oh gosh, I smell burning flesh. I like have to get out of here. It's like making my head, like making me nauseous.
I think when I got the understanding of that, I was not that I was, thinking, oh, a burger would be nice, but I mean, I wouldn't, but it was like, I'm never, ever going to have it again. Mm-hmm. The understanding was so clear to me.
Okay, so I'm looking back at the questions, and so thank you again for this question he made me. I can see most of them.
Oh, and I just want to add another thing, just really short. If you have to flavor everything, like meat, it doesn't really taste like anything unless you flavor it. And so we've come to see you can make other things that has the same consistency and taste the same, basically, but in plant form. Plant-based form is what I meant to say.
Mm-hmm. So I'll just go and go. I just saw a couple of these last notes. I saw Nina said, that seems to be true too, because look at what we see via celebrities, movies, and entertainment. Blood, pretty much honoring the sacrificial system. Most celebrities have done a shoe covered in blood.
Exactly.
Great point. Great point, yeah.
That's what always comes to my mind every time.
Yeah.
Because it's like, that's what they do. They do
That's
that
what they do.
all the time. Yeah.
That's what they do. And I'm trying to, like, the reason we set it up for people and why I keep saying everything about the Father was water, life. Everything about the enemy was blood, death. And the reason is because it is easy to get lost in the sauce when you're just in the middle of the Christian conversation, and you've got
Yeah.
every pastor and seminary trained theologian barking at, oh, this means this. Well, you got to look in the Greek. Things.
And you
I'm
don't
like,
know anything about the enemy then.
Yeshua was fringe, y'all. Like, I was addressing some of the hater comments earlier, and I didn't particularly read this comment, but one of his other comments were, I don't want to say hater comments. I was addressing the comments of someone who does not agree with me on my take on some of these things. And one of his comments was, the Nazarenes, Jesus is not like a conspiracy theorist. In many cases, people think that Jesus might have been a Pharisee or was sympathetic with the Pharisees, and the Pharisees had the voice of the people, and they disagree with the Sadducees. And I'm sitting there like, sounds green behind the ears, because it doesn't act like, number one, that has not been the takeaway that I have done with the several scholars and research points that I've kind of read across.
And even scripture, if you look at...
And even scripture. Jesus didn't say anything
read
nice.
That one.
The chief priests and the Sadducees and the capitulating Pharisees were actually trying to kill this dude.
And they did.
And people always say, oh, how do you know, like, Jesus? They don't always say this. A handful of people who are very book smart, if you ask me, and not very street smart, will say, well, show me your evidence that Jesus was hated by the Pharisees. And it's like, the whole book, what do you mean, show me your evidence? Like, show me your evidence that he wasn't.
The parable of the vine dresses.
I know, but that's one point. I'm talking about like 50 touch points, like all these different injunctions about how, if your righteousness does not exceed that of the Pharisees, you shall by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. Like, that's a quote from Jesus. And people read that quote and be like, well, what do you mean Jesus wasn't a Pharisee? How can you take, it's the same reason people can take that verse and take the 2 Peter verse and think Peter somehow vouching for Paul. Peter calls Paul a brother in 2 Peter. It's like, you can really read 2 Peter and come away like that's a support? Like, let's just hypothetically say, if Jennifer was trying to be a cast member on my TV show. You're an actress, I'm an actor. You're trying to be a cast member. And I say, hi, you guys. Our beloved friend, Jennifer, colleague, okay? She sometimes writes in a way that's difficult to understand. And if you haven't really acted with our company before, you don't know the history of theater acting, you might actually take her suggestion and twist them to your own destruction and die from her words. Does it sound like to you I'm like vouching for her? Is that what that sounds like? That I'm vouching? Oh, you might actually hear what she says and die from it. I mean, I call her a companion or colleague, and
not even a co-actor,
right? Not even a cast member, right? Or like a co-actor. It's like, I'm not calling her the one thing she want to be called, which is like in the case of Peter, an apostle. In the case of Paul, he sought the letters of recommendation from the Jerusalem assembly so he can get on the level with the apostle. He didn't get them, and so he's forget them. I didn't learn nothing from them anyway. I'm my own apostle, but. If I'm explaining to somebody that this lady writes in a way that might kill you, and I specifically don't call her a cast member or an apostle, I call her like a brother and a sister, my sister. Okay, I'm not validating her. You see what I'm saying? I'm not. It's just not, and it's in the same regard with like Jesus and the Pharisees, and he's like, yeah, they beware of what they add to this instructions. Mm-hmm. Oh, but what do you think that the Pharisees? Every jot and tittle was kept perfectly. Oh, really? Because that's how we're working with this. Because just in Judaism, not in Islam, because every single person I know who's Jewish or Christian would clearly disagree that the Quran was kept infallibly. But apparently the Bible was, but not the whole Bible, just the Torah. Right. But then there's 2 other texts that say Jesus is burning, or there's another text that says Jesus is burning in hot feces that comes later to help give extrapolations and clarity on the Torah from a Jewish mystical standpoint. And because this text over here says Jesus is burning in feces, I'm supposed to trust the body of work about other matters as it relates to Torah.
And some diabolical things that are in
right.
there.
And some of the other things that it sanctions and turns a blind eye to. in regards to taking advantage of young children, taking advantage of just women, just not just as a general sense, but in a case of, assault or the 4-letter R word, things that are just sanctioned and A-okay. Not in the Torah, but in the commentary on the Torah, which is elevated in most cases higher than the Torah itself in practice. You see what I'm saying? Everybody gives lip service to everything, even the Christians. They just don't actually follow the Torah. They would never tell you the first 5 books of the Bible are irrelevant. They just act that way in practice. You see what I mean? So, yes.
You'll know them by their fruit.
Blood, blood, blood. And this blood is kind of just one of these things that's like, I don't know how I didn't quite catch it. I guess it took me just some time about re-investigating this and really backing up and being like, got it. There is this crazy obsession with blood in this ritualistic sense that seems to permeate everything that the false light and the synagogue of you-know-who is really involved in. Everything Yeshua had to do was talking against that, talking about how Abel's blood is crying out from the ground, like how blood was always problematic or evidence of a problem somewhere, and water was always the solution for that. We talk a little bit about that in part 2 and part 3. That's basic. I know we had a couple people who just joined. We're just at the tail end. We've been talking for about 3.5 hours now.
Oh my.
But
did you tell him that the video for the last live that we did 2 weeks ago is on its way to be on YouTube soon?
Yeah, I did mention that.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay. It's taking time because...
It's taking time because it was 9 hours of talking, and it was probably the most voice
really
references.
Busy day. Busy 2 weeks, too.
Yeah, it was a busy 2 weeks. Like, that was crazy because I wrapped that video, like, stood up, peed and emptied my bladder. That was like 14 minutes of pee in a row. And then,
everyone needs to know this.
I mean, not being facetious. Nobody pees for 14 minutes. And if you do, like, I'm pretty sure Guinness World Records has a phone call for you. But I went and I basically walked downstairs, ate some food, and immediately started doing pre-production for the shoot that I had less than a day or so later. And I filmed in Atlanta, and then it was an intense 2 weeks of wrapping that out. It's a TV commercial. It's on TV now. I haven't even watched it because I've seen it 1,000 times on my computer before I send it off to the network. But I worked, and then now that work is done, I just in the last day or two started like rebuffing all the graphics and the verse references from that. So I just finished last night the just part 1.
With
and
2
so I'm
hours
about to
on
go.
that one, right?
It's like a little over 2 hours for part 1. I think part 2 is going to be a little under 2 hours. And then part 3 and 4, we'll see. I might do.
How many parts will it be? Since there's 9 hours to part.
It just, I don't make the parts any length. I just try to make them not 4 hours, and I try to make them break at a point that makes sense.
Right.
So whenever I find a good breaking point, I'll make it make sense and chop it
So
out.
if you just coming in here now, if you want to see the other lives, there's been 4 other lives. You can go to my link in my bio here on Instagram and find it under Shabbat Studies, or you can go to youtube.com/Swedish SWEEDDISH Swedish, and you'll find.
You can find the link in her bio. You don't have to hunt and search for the thing that you may have been able to spell right. The link is right in her bio to take you to the YouTube. The videos are syndicated right here on Instagram, but it is a lot easier to navigate your place.
Right,
YouTube,
Instagram
it's
is
obviously easier to play and pause and pick up where you left off for these very long episodes on YouTube. It's oriented like this so that my head isn't cut off when I lean like this, on YouTube. It also has tons of...
Be flipped.
Right. It's all the text is, like, the video's not inverted. The verse references are all pulled up on the screen. There's a couple
and the markers.
Chapter markers. So it's just a much better viewing experience on YouTube as opposed to just rewatching them here on Instagram.
If you like to share it,
Plus, it's easier to share for sure.
But also, yeah.
So that's basically like, I don't want to keep. We can maybe wrap it up there for the evening.
Yeah. That's a good idea. But also, I want to mention, because I know that there's people that have been asking well, now, like, what kind of worship music do I listen
Oh.
to? And if you go to that same YouTube page, there are some songs there that we did that are worship songs. Like, there's one called "No Need to Worry."
Thank you.
That's one of my favorite songs, actually. I think because it's just to the Father, and so you know, if you want to have a listen, see if it's something that you like to listen to. And also, there's did a few chapters of the book of Sirach reading, so you can just listen to it. And also for future, and I'm saying this so that I will that I will hold myself accountable. But I'm planning on reading Proverbs, all chapters, and start releasing them in January, because I think Proverbs is so many nuggets in there. And oh yeah, and Chris, I already recorded
Solomon, son of David,
the first chapter.
Israel. For knowing wisdom and discipline,
This is
Anyway,
just the one.
understanding the word.
She started this the other day, so she recorded the first
Yeah.
chapter already. It's ready to go. You haven't put
Yeah.
the video to it, but
Well, yeah.
she's going to be doing the same thing she did with the book of Sirach with the book of Proverbs. So
Yeah. And so, yeah, can go there for that.
what's the real calendar of the world? Love what you both are doing. Okay, well, we'll thank you very much, everybody, for the feedback. So we should probably do like I think it would be interesting to do a calendar episode.
Yeah.
Because it is kind of like a very, very nuanced question to answer. What I'll briefly say is maybe Enoch's calendar. I think he made me or somebody asked about the 3 Enoch or somebody else in the question box. It's like there's 3 books of Enoch. Do you know if they're legit? I know Enoch 1 is. That's the one we stick with.
Yeah, it's just
Enoch 2, Enoch 3. Like it's kind of like saying that, like from what Enoch says, it's supposed to be 364 books of Enoch, and we've only got 3. But to go back to I was
Sorry,
trying to answer the question.
I didn't know you were doing that.
You did? I was
No,
looking
sorry.
at the question. The question is, what is the real calendar of the world? So I think that, to be honest, I think the Jubilee Enochian calendar is the actual calendar. Now, that's not a calendar set up like how we have it today. A Jubilee is a different,
That's in there or in the book of Enoch?
both.
Okay.
But the point isn't to bring up the calendar. Because the Enoch talk about the portals and the sun and moon, it has all that stuff.
Right.
The point is to say a calendar, a whole point of a concept of a calendar is a framework with how to measure time. A jubilee is a framework of how to measure time. It's a cycle of 50 years. So you have what are called weeks. A week in it is a span of 7 years. A day is a span of 1 year. So 7 weeks within a span of 1 jubilee. 7 times 7 is what? You're supposed to know this.
42? 49.
Yes. 49. And the 50th year is this Jubilee year. So there's so many mathematical ways that you can factor in the sevens of it all. But essentially, when you go back and you read the book of Jubilees, it's covering basically the same exact territory as the book of Genesis, only it's doing it with a Jubilee model. In the 14th Jubilee of the 13th week on the first day, Cain killed Abel, or, whatever it is, like on the, just pick any chapter. And what does it say?
Of that one, Julie?
And in the 35th Jubilee, in the 3rd week in the 1st year, Reu took a wife, and her name was Orah, daughter of Ur, son of Kesed, and she bore him a son in the 7th year of this week and of this Jubilee, and he called his name Sarah. And the sons of Noah began to fight with each other, right? So it's talking about the story of Noah, but I forget Reu. That was see, every name has like an original Hebrew name and like an Aramaic name. So some of the names that you'll see, like Reuel or Jethro, like Moses' wife's dad, Moses' father-in-law was called Jethro, and then other translations called Reuel. Anyway,
There it is.
it'll just say that at the beginning of each chapter. And in the 35th Jubilee, in the third week in the first year. Okay, so what that's doing is it's giving you a calendar, a time. The 35th Jubilee is 50 times 35 plus, the third week, so 21 at least in, plus the first year. So literally the 22nd week, 22nd year. So you take 50 plus 35 plus 27, and that was the year that this happened. The Jubilee being from the first to the 50th year was one Jubilee. The 51st year to the 100th year was the second Jubilee. And so in the 35th Jubilee, we're talking Abraham and that whole conversation.
So that's going. But this is actually the book of Enoch that has like the actual calendar structure thingy.
Right, but
When the sun goes through the portal.
That's not.
And first portal and in through the. It's right here.
Okay, but I want to make a different episode about the whole calendar system. Plus, I'll cut off in just a couple minutes. But the reason I wanted to answer this question really quickly is to say that Enoch is establishing the creation of the cosmos, the order of things, the purpose of things. A Jubilee is simply the framework with how they kept that record. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So it's like a Jubilee isn't really a calendar. Enoch created a framework for how to observe time. So it's not like you can really say he created a calendar, but in practice, it kind of is a calendar because the whole point of the calendar.
He wrote it all down, yeah.
Well, right. But it's not just about writing it down. It's saying that Enoch had a way of establishing a reason for the measurement system to begin with, which was planting, harvesting, and during the appointed times. Keeping the Moedim, planting and harvesting. So after the final harvest in the fall and the final Moedim of Sukkot, the calendar kind of falls apart. It doesn't reset until the top of the year at the next equinox, the sighting of the identification of the next equinox. Then they count a couple days in. There's a whole, that's why I said we need to make it a separate episode, because there's a whole separate school of thought. Solar calendar, loony solar calendar, which is true. There's all that comes later.
Yeah. But one thing that is interesting to know when we found out is that the new year is always going to be in the spring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Makes sense.
The new year is when the new year starts new. It's interesting how that works. The Gregorian twisted in the sister calendar is who's got the brand new year and the dead middle of winter and all this stuff. And based on the rebirth of the sun from the winter solstice acknowledgement, not so much anything that makes Enochian sense, we'll say it like that. But a Jubilee is simply, again, I'm not going to read much of this. In fact, I'm not going to read much at all. But
here it's really good. Right here. I think it's here. Because the new year supposedly starts on the fourth day of the week. And I
know, but that's in the Bible too. And on the fourth day, he created the sun, the moon, and the stars, and placed them in the expanse of the heavens to give light upon all the earth and to rule over the day and the night, and to divide to the light from the darkness. And Elohim appointed the sun to be a great sign of the earth. Yeah, that's good. It's just, I'm only trying to find how it starts to talk about.
Wait, hold on.
Man.
Right here.
Ooh, I'm looking for something. I can't look for something. You looking for something in the same book at the same time?
Here, this is a good one.
I already
The great
thought
sign.
Okay.
The great sign of Sabbath day.
Well, then read it.
What were you going to read?
I'm trying to find the point of a Jubilee. That's the whole point I've been trying to make this whole time. I just keep getting derailed.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, and in the third week of the second Jubilee, she gave birth to Cain. And in the fourth week, she gave birth to Abel. And in the fifth week, she gave birth to her daughter, Awan, right? So this is talking about Eve. So seeing in the third week of the second Jubilee, that's so key/critical. The second Jubilee is already past 50 years of the process, right? So the first chunk of 50 years is the first Jubilee. The second chunk of 50 years, I might have to say goodbye.
Bye if I don't
in case you, yeah, because I might be wrapping this up pretty quick.
Bye if I don't see you later.
Bye if I don't see you later. In the third week, okay, so again, I'm just reading this first little line out of Jubilee's chapter 4, verse 1. And in the 3rd week of the 2nd Jubilee, she gave birth to Cain. Okay. And in the 4th, she gave birth to Abel. Now, a week is a grouping of 7 years. Okay. A chunk of 7 years is what the ancients called a week. Okay. So if we're talking 50 years being the first Jubilee, you're in the 2nd Jubilee, and you're in the 7, 14, 21, the 3rd week of it. And on the, it just says, so sometime after 50, 60, 70, 71 years after the creation of whenever they started counting is when Cain was born. It says in the 4th, she gave birth to Abel. So 10 years later, within 10 years later, sorry, not 10 years, within 7 years later, at some span of 7 months, 7 years, sometime between 1 day and 7 years, Abel was born. So the reason I think that this book was so profound is that it helps you see what came what, and then like work out the math on how much time was between what. And then you go like, holy smokes, like I always thought Cain and Abel were like twins, because in the Bible it says, and Adam knew his wife and Cain was born, and Adam knew his wife and Abel was born. And it doesn't say, and almost 7 years of time passed in between that. It just says, and then it doesn't even talk about no daughters, right? Then you hear, yeah, and then in the 3rd week she gave birth to Cain, and in the 4th to Abel, and the 5th week to her daughter. And then there's other children and stuff. So it helps you really put your mind around how much time was going. And that's why I think that they established this Jubilee concept, because it is a solid framework for helping just block out the order of things. As far as Enoch, and I'm not trying to knock what my wife was presenting, it's just kind of a different conversation for a different day. It's about the establishment of a calendar model and the cosmos and how it factors in, and the cyclical timekeeping that is the stars and the sun and the moon. So that is that deserves its own episode, to be honest. It really does.
We actually did celebrate the first day of winter.
Yeah.
Just on Wednesday, according to the Enochian Saddle-Kite calendar.
Mm-hmm.
Saddle-Kite calendar.
Coming a Shabbat episode would be great, especially for those trying to observe the feast. Okay, Nina. Hey, Agape 716. How you doing,
What
brother?
did she say? Oh.
It says, ooh, wow, I'm going to have to come back and re-listen to this part. A Shabbat episode would be great, especially for those trying to observe the feast. Yeah, we should do a whole Shabbat episode about the feast. That's not. That's also a pretty good idea. The feasts are, I think are pretty cool. It's like, we have the Feast of All Feasts coming up in about 48 hours. And I think, it's not something that my family will be participating in, but a lot of people do. And I think that when you really start getting into purpose, it's like changes everything. Because for most people, Christmas is just like, it's not, the purpose is what we all are told it is, but that isn't really the true purpose of the holiday. And none of everybody's busyness and their like hustle and bustle, none of that actually makes it seem like the purpose is for Jesus. So it clearly isn't. But when it comes to the Moedim, it's a different conversation. And I think that even though a lot of us are babies and kind of like just starting out how to like put one foot in front of the other as far as this is what I really do think honors the Most High. I think we've been given two solid examples of that in the case of Job, in the case of Abraham for sure, maybe even the case of Moses, for certainly in the case of Daniel, where he really honors the individual who in a completely Babylonian or pagan setting comes out and starts observing things and ceases from observing things of the surrounding time. That's Abraham's whole story. That's the whole backstory to Abraham. There's the whole conversation, everybody, Hebrew, everything, Israel, all that starts off with Abraham's obedience to walk away from all the Canaanite debauchery in Ur, Chaldea at the time.
Obedience, or just start to seek him, because he was wondering, well, who created the sun and the moon? Because people are honoring the sun and the moon, but who made those things?
Aileen said, I'm saying 9 hours. Yeah, we could probably talk for a while on the feast thing. So That being said, we've already almost pushing probably 15 minutes away from 4 hours with this one.
Oh.
So let's maybe cap it here.
Yeah.
Thank you all for hanging out. Let me make sure I didn't miss any. I'll catch the rest of this on your page. It'll be there. Mm-hmm.
1 second.
So you guys, it's been, we enjoy talking about this stuff. It's like sometimes it's a bit hard. It's not hard. It's just like it's hard to do it without letting my frustrations or personal idiosyncrasies overshadow the message, I think.
Right.
Kind of.
Oh, now I remember. I wanted to add something when it comes to the Moedim or the appointed times. As we know, tradition really is something that helps us remember the days, and so it's something that can hold through the generations. Like even if you, let's say if now you do the Father's feasts, it would make sense why he would want us to do them, because it helps us to remember him and what he did, and each appointed time has a time or it has a story about, well, it's celebrated in a time when a certain thing happened. So like for example the Feast of Tabernacles, which is usually in around September, October, it's just to remember that the Israelites were in tents in the wilderness, and it just becomes like you're a part of the story by doing these appointed times. And I remember when we started doing it, how I felt like, oh my gosh, I feel so excited. I'm actually like doing something that he asked us to do, and it was really nice. But also it helped because yes, if you decide to like let go of the other traditions that wasn't asked by the Father, it is a little bit of a mourning. You mourn
season,
and you have so many memories attached to these things, and so it's like a little bit of a comfort that you have something else to do. And I mean, for us, it's really like a party every Friday evening, because we have like a Shabbat Eve kind of thing, and so I think we do more parties now than, I mean, it's not like we're partying and drinking and things. It's just we have a nice dinner, we all come together and cook together, and
the children love it. They play.
Yeah.
It helps ground the kids in something that's real and not that's just commercial.
And also that you're not necessarily like, I mean, you're not lying about it. Like if you talk about Santa, like he's not real, and then you're trying to keep that. I mean, it's for play. I get it's fun like that, but anyway, I don't want to get into that too much. I don't want to get into that too much because I know that it's a sensitive topic, and I did enjoy doing it.
24 hours from now will be Santa's birthday, so I'm not trying to say screw you, Santa, on your birthday. So yeah, so here we are. It's now Christmas Eve, as in the wee hours of the morning.
And in Sweden, they celebrate Christmas.
Oh yeah,
in Sweden on the 24th.
All that I was saying. Shout out to my dad.
And of course, yes, shout out to your dad.
It's okay.
I did hear you. I was going to come back to it, but I was also saying something. But I do love your dad.
I call her the whisper queen, the voice of modulation queen. She be talking like this, and then she talks like this, and then she talks like that, and I don't know why she be yelling.
It's just a natural.
It's just a natural way.
It's my voice naturally.
I know.
Does that.
She doesn't talk like a radio announcer, which is actually not natural at all. So there's that. Anyway, we got our little 2-minute warning. You guys, thank you so much for.
I like this to be in the light.
Thank you so much for hanging out with us. We appreciate all of your patience and all of your feedback and your questions. And thank you to my lovely wife for cracking me upside the head to actually come and sit down and talk to y'all on Sabbath, which it's not like she made me do it, but like she was definitely the one like, all right, I really want to start this. And I'm like, all right. I'll support you.
Seek first the kingdom of heaven, and all things will be added.
All these things will be added unto you. And all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. Mm-hmm. He shall. That's how you know it's true, because it says shall. Jesus was King James. So I say shall. Y'all.
It is the most important thing, I think.
Yeah. All right. Y'all have a good night. We'll talk to you again next week. We'll probably come up with exactly what we're going to talk about and maybe put that out a little earlier. But we will be posting the episodes about Paul over the next few days. And we will be trying to get some rest so that next weekend we have something even juicier to share.
All righty then.
All right. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Ooh.